Welcome to the regular meeting of the El Centro City Council for Tuesday. Can I have your attention, please? I have a gavel. And I forget that I have this thing in front of me. Welcome to the El Centro City Council meeting of June 7th. First, we'll start with a roll call.
Efraín Silva,
Present.
Sedelia Sanders,
Here.
Cheryl Villegas Walker,
Here.
John Edney,
Present.
and Benjamin Solomon.
Here.
Mr. Solomon will lead us into both the pledge and the invocation, please. Please rise.
Ready? Begin. Lord, we come here today as a council to meet and serve our community, to use our resources well and wisely, to represent all members of our community fairly, to make decisions that promote the common good. We recognize our responsibilities to the past and to the future, and the rights and the needs of both individual and community. As trusted servants, we seek blessings on our deliberation and on our efforts here today. And may we act wisely and well. I ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Solomon.
206.
We'll now have a report from our city attorney on our closed session conducted earlier today.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. The council did meet in closed session regarding the listed items on the closed session statement. There were 5 potential litigation items. There's no action to report with regard to those items. I should report, however, that the council did authorize the engagement of the law firm of McDougall Love Eckes et al. Motion by Edney, second by Solomon, passed on a 5-0 vote. In particular, the principal is Mr. Bomer, and that is for potential eminent domain litigation. The council did also meet with its negotiators regarding real property acquisition, regarding the desert property and the Bertucci property as it pertains to the Waterman Avenue extension, and there's no action to report. The board did meet with its labor negotiators regarding all the bargaining units and the contract employees that were listed there. It's my understanding that there are several actions that are going to take place in public session with regard to contracts that were to be acted upon in public session. They are the certified wastewater treatment plant operators and the contract positions of city manager, chief of police, director of planning and zoning, director of economic development, director of parks and recreation, director of finance, library director, and director of public works city engineer. During the time that the city council discussed the city attorney contract, I did leave the room, and it's my understanding that the council did adjourn at 1:20 p.m. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. And we'll take those items after the consent agenda. This is a public meeting. If there's an item on the agenda in which you wish to be heard, please complete a speaker slip and submit it to the city clerk prior to the start of the meeting. When the item is announced and your name is called by the mayor, please come forward to the microphone, address yourself to the council, stating your name and address for the record. Unless the mayor extends the time, there is a 3-minute time limit for each public presentation. If you wish to address the council on any subject matter within the council's jurisdiction that is not listed on the agenda, you may do so during the public comment portion of the agenda. I do have some slips, and there's a gentleman, someone would like to speak on item 18 that will come later. The budget, item 19. I do have a request from Daniel Madrid to speak as it relates to Buckland Park, and I'll address that jointly when we have Ms. Mary Ann Klein at the podium in a few minutes. And also have a request to speak from Brad Chapin And rather than having him wait until the end of the meeting, I'll do that at the beginning of the meeting as well. So I'd like to, if we look at scheduled public comment, we have a request on the agenda by Catherine Kryman to speak. However, she's not able to be here today, and instead, Mary Ann Klein would like to speak to the council on issues related to Buckland Park. So is Ms. Klein here?
Yes.
Yes.
I represent probably 8 to 10 very senior citizens who walk 5 days a week in Buckland Park, and we've thoroughly enjoyed the family park that it is. We do have some concerns. We didn't know about this sidewalk that was going to be going in at this time. We walked there because of the dirt, because of the soft texture. It's easier on the hips, easier on the knees and ankles, and maybe when you get to be our age, you'll appreciate this. But rain or shine, we walk 5 days a week, winter, summer, spring, fall. We don't because we don't dare let anybody else down. Now, I know I have a time limit, so I want to go through this very quickly. It's our concern with this, as far as the path is concerned, what if we would fall? Because tile is much more slippery than dirt. And that leaves you wide open for lawsuits. And this is a concern of ours, because who pays for these lawsuits? We all do. Everyone, all the citizens pay for this. And I think this is a real concern. And my other concern is, it's sort of a family park now, a beautiful family park. Once we put those brick or tile or whatever you're calling them in the sidewalk, how wide is it going to be? But if I were a teenager and I really liked to skateboard or ride a bicycle, wow, I would soon turn that into a teenage park. And I think this is a concern of mine. The other one is, we don't have dust there. I walked Monday, probably on one of the windiest days of the year. We didn't have dust, we had wind, you know. But with all of the grass, there is not that dust. And I know you wrote this out saying we had to keep the dust out. If you want dust, go to a baseball park that hasn't been watered or taken care of. And I think that this is a concern that we want to be careful of. And then, how wide is this going to be? That's our other concern. Right now, this walkway is like from 6 to 8 feet in width. At some points, it's 20. I would invite all of you to come walk with us, 6:30 in the morning, and see what the park really is about. Because I think this is important. You're going to have 3 areas. Unless you tile the entire area, you are not going to have an attractive park. You right now have the dust areas that would have to be covered with something. I think the upkeep of the tile, you're underestimating, because a little sand blowing on that or grass, and that requires care and upkeep. Another thing, the trucks use our walkway, and we step out of the way, we step in the grass, or they wait for us, and this is great. But will the bricks stand up under this? Is this something, because they don't walk and look in the park. We walk and we see the dead fish and the trash that need to be picked up, but they're not. And I said, this is something that concerns us. We like a clean park. I was very appreciative of when they furnished plastic bags for the pickup for the dogs, because everybody cleaned up after their animals sinned. Now they don't, because I guess that has been eliminated. The ducks and the duck food has been eliminated. And this, we are eliminating some of the things that made it beautiful in a family park. And then the other thing that I want to say that I hope that we continue and can continue with this. If we wanted to walk on hard surface, we'd go to the mall where we have air conditioning. I can't walk there. And I know some of the other people can't either. I could walk in Walmart or Costco if my knees and hips would handle it. But you see, this is one thing. Of course, we will walk in the grass, which will mean you'll have to have more paths for us, because we will probably make new paths. So I think this is a concern that we should be careful. And I hope I've covered most of the things that I'm supposed to. this is something that I think we have to remember. When I was using state money, I had to send out an inventory and find out what was really needed in the community before I could do a program or a project. Now, I didn't see that happening, and this kind of worries me. I think we need to get out before all this goes on and find out what is needed and what should be done. So this is my concern.
Thank you, Ms. Klein. Along the same lines, I do have a request from Daniel Madrid to speak.
I'm Dan Madrid. I live right across the street from Buckland Park for the last 26 or 27 years. And what a beautiful park we have in this city. The people who manicure and take care of our park just do such a splendid, beautiful job. And on Saturdays and Sundays, it's evident because you see families with their children, and the fathers are teaching their children how to ride bikes, and there's parties and quinceañeras and weddings, and every Monday I'm the recipient of piñatas and paper plates and cups that blow across the street from the park. That's not a complaint to me. I pick that stuff up and throw it in the trash because I see the beauty and the pleasure that that park gives to our community. I also see the running kids from the high school, the track meets that go on there. And I've yet to see a track at USC or any of the high schools with a brick path. I just can't understand the reasoning behind trying to do this. I think the council should focus on what the people of this community want and need instead of $300,000 of grant money. That doesn't make sense to me. The seniors are very prone to tripping and falling over anything. And all it's going to take is for one of those bricks to come up with a little bit of moisture and disapproximate itself from the other bricks. And Mavis, who's 78 years old, is going to hit that brick with her toe. And guess what? The city's going to be on the hook for that. Because you've been warned. Those bricks don't stay perfectly even. And furthermore, in closing, if our libraries cannot, that's closed up, locked up and everything, if they can't control the copper that is being stolen out of that library, how are you going to control the theft of the bricks? It says here in the newspaper that they're easily removed and replaced. Well, guess what? At night, when nobody's there, they're going to be easily removed, and we're going to have a problem. So I wish you people would really look at the thing closely and consider the needs of this community. That I think a lot of people don't want this damn thing. For myself, like I say, I live across the street from the park. I don't want it. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Madrid. Comments from council?
From city manager either, Mr.
Yeah, no, we had staff, if there were any questions from the council about the project, if that's needed, or this is a project that it's, well, actually, maybe for the folks that are here to hear it. Ms. Reister, I think you had the background and when we started on this project. You want to come to the podium? Or Terry, I'm sorry, actually, the engineering folks have, I looked at parks, but it's the engineering folks who have handled the design and the process. My apologies, Mr. Hagan.
This was a joint Parks Department and Public Works Department project. We went through and looked at a lot of different alternative materials. I'll go through that, talk about the cost, and explain how we got to where we're at. Of course, this is CMAQ money, Congestion Management Air Quality money. It's a grant that we received. And when we did research on this, we looked and did a search on the internet, and when you look on the internet, you see thousands of sites that show pavers and recreational areas where people walk and run. And this just a couple samples right here that you'll see this throughout the United States. This is a very popular way of doing pathways for both running and walking. The challenges, we had a limited budget. The pathway has to support maintenance vehicles, heavy vehicles, special events, traffic. They've got to be resistant to water sprinklers. They have to be ADA compliant, pedestrian friendly. They have to be low maintenance. We, at times, will probably have to trench across those pathways with pavers. We can lift those up, trench across, replace the decomposed granite, the 2-inch layer of sand, and then the pavers back on there without ever seeing any issue like you'd see with concrete or asphalt, where you see a trench across there and a patch. This we can go in and pull those up, do trenching, and go back in, and you'll never know that trench was there. And we wanted to reduce the dust. That's, again, the CMAQ requirement. We looked at asphalt paving, poured concrete, rubber pavers, and concrete pavers. And I do have a sample of the rubber pavers. We actually tracked those down. I saw these at a Public Works conference I attended, and we tracked those down. And they're still very hard. You can look at these. In fact, I'll pass one around here to the audience.
Why don't you get it back?
Are these what we're using, Terry?
No, this is not what we're using. The price was prohibitive, but we did look at that, and they're still very hard. I don't know. There'd be a little bit more cushion, but not a lot. So asphalt, as you know, it degrades with the sun, get a lot of cracks. Ultimately, you end up with like alligator cracking, raveling. Water enters the cracks and erodes the binders and it causes it to fail. And be a high maintenance, and the cost would be about $6 a square foot. This is a narrow path. It's only 10 feet wide, and that's the higher cost. Poured concrete. Be a lot of sub-base preparation. Currently, the pathway currently is made of decomposed granite. So it's compacted, but still stuff kicks up. There's a little bit of dust, and I don't think you'd want to fall down in the decomposed granite either. I would think there'd be more issues with tripping than what we have with the pavers. But the poured concrete you end up with cracks with it. You have to have steel reinforcement. You've got to have expansion joints. It's a harder surface than concrete pavers. There's no give. If you use color concrete, the cost goes up, and without the color, you have a lot of heat reflecting off the concrete. Install cost probably about $9 a square foot. Rubber pavers, we looked at this. This, of course, would be the ideal way to go if we could afford it. The material cost is very high. It's the same similar installation as the concrete pavers, but there is a grid underneath it that goes down. And it's about $15.50 a square foot installed. And then the concrete pavers. Similar to the poured concrete, they're kind of an open, they're not a smooth concrete, but they're kind of an open face, so they're non-slip type brick finish. They eliminate the cracking problem that you'd have with asphalt or concrete. There is a little bit more deformation or give than regular concrete would be, and then they have an installed cost of $7 a square foot. And you can see the bedding sand here. They have a couple inches of bedding sand and probably about 6 to 8 inches of decomposed granite. This is the actual color, the sample colors that we selected, along with Parks. Very attractive color. And you can see the porousness in the pavers. Going back to the comparison between the rubber pavers and the concrete pavers, the material cost alone for the rubber pavers is $10 a square foot. For the concrete pavers is $1.58. So we're doing 43,000 square feet in the park. So the difference alone in cost is more than the project itself. It's $362,000 difference in cost for material. The total budget for the project is $322,000. This is the funding summary. Cost of the pavers is $68,000. The contract's been awarded to Floyd Johnson. It's due to start next week, and it's going to be 2 months time frame. So staff recommends, along with the Parks Department, that we go forward with the project. It'll be a low maintenance cost, good strength and aesthetics. Any questions?
Ms. Walker?
Yeah, Mr. Hagan, I think that both of our speakers, Ms. Klein and Mr. Madrid, made some points that I would like you to respond to, if you would, please. First concern expressed was with regard to how slippery those tiles may become if they become wet from rain or irrigation. What's your comment with regard to the
They're
surface?
a porous finish, the surface finish. So, and the fact that they are pavers, the water will drain right down between them. You won't get a buildup of water like on a concrete surface. It drains right down through the sand and through the decomposed granite. So even in rain, they should stay, the water should be flowing right down in between them.
What about, a second point raised then was skateboarders or bicyclists deciding if that would be a surface that they would want to use?
That could take place, yes, until we do the skate park.
Okay, maybe we could look at some alternatives to make it less inviting to skateboarders and bicyclists. Let's
Possibly code enforcement, a change in the code and signs.
wonder
I
if we
would
could
look to
do
the
some
Parks
outreach to
Department to make
other
it.
public agencies to see if they've come up with ideas on how to restrict that. What about upkeep of the tile?
Again, they're very friendly as far as if you have to go in and make trenching across them and repairs, it's very easy to pull them up, put the DG back down, 2 inches of sand, smooth it out, and then lay them in there back in place. They just interlock together.
I think that kind of segues into Mr. Madrid's point with regard to the bricks actually being taken by thieves. We saw that actually happen with our downtown landscaping. I'm not sure if you were here when we re-landscaped downtown, put the new plants and shrubs in, and somebody came along right behind us and pulled a bump, and you go back the next day and all you see are the empty holes where the landscaping was. So how do we do that?
When the pavers are placed there, they put sand, just the right particle size, over the top of them and room that in, and that works down in between them. So it's very difficult to get that very first paver out. Now, of course, once you get one out, then you can take others out, but getting the very first one, they're going to be interlocked together.
Okay. And what about the bricks being, remaining on a flat, even surface as opposed to becoming, say, a lip dislodged or something that someone can catch their foot on?
Again, the interlocking with the sand, if they room into it, it locks them together. And then you've got a sound base and 2 inches of sand, so there shouldn't be any differential movement.
I think I'm pretty satisfied with your responses, with the exception of the bicyclists and the skateboarders, and I really think we need to come up with a way to make sure that's not going on.
Yeah. Sandra?
Do we allow bicycles? People ride their bikes over there now, don't they?
No,
We don't allow bicycles? in
No, we
the park?
do.
we do.
People ride their bikes over there in that park, on the dirt, all the time.
They're there.
Ms. Sanders?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There was, to piggyback up on the comments and questions by Ms. Walker, Mr. Hagan, there was one additional point that was made by either Dr. Madrid or either Mrs. Klein, and that is I want to call it the effects that this might have on the joints, the knee joints, the ankles, and either the hips as they're walking across something as solid and deep as these pavers. Now, do you think this is somewhat different and would have more give than, say, concrete? Or is this very similar to concrete?
they should give more than the concrete would. Concrete would be thicker, it'd have reinforcing in it, rebar, and be much more solid. This should be probably similar to asphalt.
Because of the sand beneath it, and which would be, okay,
Somewhat of a cushion, yes.
okay, somewhat of a cushion you anticipate?
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you, that's it, Mr.
Thank you, Ms. Sanders. Mr. Erdney?
I think there's one other point that we should address, Mr. Hagan. Maybe you could give a little background on the air quality issue and why, whether it's dirt parking lots or dirt paths, why that becomes so critical for the city in regard to our requirements of meeting air quality standards.
Yes. Again, this was decomposed granite, people walking on it, trucks driving on it. You get the issue with PM10, particulate matters that go into people's lungs, affect them, long-term health effects, that type of thing.
This is a non-attainment area, correct?
Yes.
We have continual problems with air quality here. It doesn't matter whether it's man-made controlled or whether the environment causes it. It doesn't affect, we're not allowed to use the excuse that the wind's blowing and thus we're not responsible for the air quality, right?
That's correct.
I think the points are valid. I think, I think the concern too is, and I want to address one other thing. I think Mrs. Klein, you suggested where we're spending money, and a lot of the monies that come into a city or a county are very controlled as to where they could be spent. So this is a grant money, and we can all talk about whether grant monies are good or bad or whatnot, but this is not money that could just easily be shifted over to some other city council or public requirement or desire. The money is specifically used to offset air pollution and improve air quality in Imperial County or in this city, correct, Mr. Hagan?
Yes.
Okay. So, and I'm not disagreeing with your points. I think they're very valid. I just don't know that we have an alternative to do it based on the cost. I think when we originally discussed this project, we had hoped to go with some type of alternative surface that wasn't pavers. But I think, Mr. Hagan, staff did an extensive job at looking at the options, and unfortunately, based on the cost and the maintenance and the upkeep, this became the best alternative that we were able to put forth for the city.
And is
Terry,
it-
you showed us some examples of other communities that have used, are we talking about the exact same papers that we have? They're not the,
Yes, there are different patterns, different shapes that help them interlock, but essentially the same type of porosity on the surface of the paver.
they're
the
not
same surface.
the $15 a square foot.
No, they're not the $15 a square foot. We looked at that alternative and researched it, found out the cost, and realized we couldn't afford it.
And also, it's my understanding that before the item came to the council, it had also been reviewed by our Community Services Commission,
Several times.
who also considered the alternatives and the adequacy of the pavers, and they also felt that given the constraints, the budget constraints, the mitigation that we had to, that we're striving for, that this would be a proper surface alternative to use.
I believe the Parks Department could answer that better.
Right. And also, one thing that we have to bear in mind, this is ready to go. We've acted on this sometime back. Construction is due to start when it's yeah.
Yes, we
So
did that twice.
I don't know what other action the council could take right now. Suppose that we could withdraw this, cancel this, but I don't know that the timing is adequate to do that. And I think that this is a project that ultimately is going to benefit the community. We're talking about a 10-foot pathway all the way around the park.
Almost a mile long.
And I've walked the park many times. I ran the park so many times. Now, there are sections of the park where people could still walk around the grass area, I suppose. But there will be some sections where the 10-foot pathway will cover the entire pathway, and there won't be room on the sides. I don't know if I'm
They would
making
have to
myself.
walk off the path if they wanted to, in the grass.
Well, this is not an action item on the agenda, it's information or public comments, but any additional comments from the council?
Mr. Mayor, I think it would be nice to respond to some of the things that was raised about our ball fields. Of course, through the efforts and help of Mrs. Walker, through the Air Pollution Control Board, we did do Sunflower Park, and we have been able to get a grant to finish off Frazier Field. Before that, we did Debbie Pittman. So I think we're really taking advantage of the funds that we have available to us to try and minimize the air pollution and the dust. And those 3 parks have already been paved.
Thank you. I think somebody raised their hand. I guess, did you want to make a point related to this, real fast?
Actually, we're starting Monday. We just signed the notice to proceed today.
Oh, okay. You're the contractor? Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir. Okay, next scheduled public comment, we have our monthly report by the El Centro Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Popejoy?
I'm sorry.
Good evening. Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Popejoy, before you get started, I really do think we need to look at the skateboard bicycle issue. If we could
We're going to pursue that because we do need to make, even if it was dirt, we need to look at how our
The
pedestrians.
skateboarders, in
well,
particular.
Well, we need to look at how these integrate. Parks, I would like to have, we'll come back with CSC and have a discussion about just how we keep we sort out our pedestrians and other vehicles, bicycles, skateboards, pedestrians on a walkway like this. I think we have to have the discussion with CSC, and that's why you have them. So, yes.
My
Thank you.
apologies, Mr. Popejoy.
Mr. Popejoy?
His last one.
Yeah, that's right. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. Good to see you all this evening. Here representing the El Centro Chamber of Commerce and Visitors Bureau for our monthly report to the city. And sadly, this is the final occasion that I will be addressing you on behalf of the Chamber as the President. It's been an honor to represent the Chamber in this capacity over the year. It's no coincidence, then, that joining me this evening is our incoming President, Sharice Alford. She'll begin her term in just a few short weeks and will be here for our monthly reports just as I have, and is the chairperson for our Governmental Affairs Committee the last year. She's the right person for that job, I can assure you of that. Our mixer for May took place at Imperial Valley Cycle Center, and they are always great hosts, and the event went very well. I found a few expensive toys to add to my wish list in no time. The Chamber has now concluded our series of business roundtables and is refining a synopsis of those findings for discussion at our annual board retreat. Our incoming President, Sharice, will then bring the findings to you in a report as requested when she gives her next one to the council, hopefully. I participated in one of these forums and heard some really good feedback and input from really diverse groups of local business people, not just the usual suspects either. There were new faces and new ideas, so I think we've gathered some really useful information. Will probably have an effect on our own policies moving forward as well. Our CEO, Kathy Kinnerson, has just returned from the ICSC Recon Trade Show in Las Vegas, where she joined the delegation from the Valley, meeting with potential retailers, including this city. We hope our participation was fruitful and will lead to more development in the region. On June 1st, Kathy Kinnerson and Sharice Alford attended the Cal Chambers Business Summit in Sacramento and took some time to visit with the offices of our elected officials at the Capitol. Prior to that, Sharice and I sat down with the Chief of Staff from State Senator Juan Vargas's office during his recent visit to the Valley. The senator now wants to open up channels of communication between the Chamber, the community, and his office. This was an effort on their part to begin that process and to apologize for not doing so sooner. And they recognize that they should have reached out to us earlier, all of us. So hopefully that will be the case moving forward. We had the pleasure of participating in a number of other events through the past month, including a ribbon cutting for Imagine School at Imperial Valley, who celebrated the completion of their first year. The grand opening ribbon cutting for the new IVC Juanita Lowe Art Gallery and the Imperial County Centennial Pavilion, and the 20-year celebration and a call to action for the Imperial Valley Food Bank, where our own Mayor Silva presented a framed proclamation. The
inside joke about that.
That was an inside joke there. 2 weeks ago, we had our annual Board of Directors dinner and new director orientation. I'm pleased to announce our new directors include Kathy Ball from Ball Appraisal, Gene Oswalt, CPA, Rudy Cienez from CNS Sports Academy, Don Thompson from Sizzler is returning to our board, and Shelley Wilkinson of Coldwell Banker will be joining our board as well. As previously noted and in other reports, our annual board retreat will take place this Friday. We'll be setting up our goals for the coming year and reviewing the past year at the same time. And we're certainly open to suggestions you may have if you can get them to us before Friday morning, but you might still be in session then, so we're open to hear from you. And finally, we hope you've RSVP'd for our annual dinner, which will take place next Thursday, June 16th, out at Old Eucalyptus Schoolhouse. Your participation in that and in everything we do is very much appreciated, and we want to welcome our new president with great fanfare. And the executive committee would also like to recognize the city for the drastic street improvements that are taking place and being completed as we speak. I think we can all agree it's a much-needed quality of life and aesthetic improvement. My teeth feel better already, and very nice job. Thank you. And thank you so much for this opportunity to provide these monthly reports from the chamber.
Thank you, Ms. Coacher.
Thank you.
Well done, Mr.
Yeah, well done. Thank you. Any comments from the council? No, I'm going to go ahead and allow Mr. Brad Chapin to speak to the council now on some issues that he wants to address.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. My name is Brad Chapin. I'm a member of the El Centro Firefighters Association. I have been asked to speak with you tonight regarding the status of the negotiations that we are currently underway with between the city and the association. The city has been adamant in having the association pay 9% towards our public safety retirement system, which the city is currently paying. The Firefighters Association would like to pose this question to the council members and city officials. If we had been paying this 9% contribution all along, would you still be asking for what essentially equates to a 9% pay cut? This item was negotiated in good faith 11 years ago, which resulted in a signed contract. When the Firefighters Association received the increase in the retirement program 11 years ago, we allowed the city to pay 9% towards our retirement in lieu of a 9% raise that we had been offered over a 3-year period. Therefore, in a sense, we have been paying our 9%. We have not received a cost of living adjustment in over 6 years. We are not able to move through our published pay ranges due to a pay freeze that has been imposed on all city employees by the city. This amounts to 3% per year pay raise for those receiving a satisfactory evaluation. That can translate up to 18% over the last several years. Today, our most senior firefighter, who has 8 years, is making the exact same as a firefighter that's been on the job for 1 day. For the last several Januaries, we have seen an increase in the cost of our insurance, which the association has paid the lion's share of those increases over the last several years. Once again, we anticipate an increase in this January. The city has now proposed that we pay 100% of any increase to our insurance. We, as an association, are aware of the economic difficulties that the state is facing, but we are also saddened with the fact that we have 2 firefighter families that qualify and are participating in WIC and state subsidized insurance programs. Therefore, with a balanced budget and 10% in a reserve account, we feel that any pay cuts or increased employee contributions would create unnecessary financial and emotional stress to our organization, not to mention the morale that it could damage. Furthermore, we have asked for a few no-cost items which have been denied across the board by the city, which some of these items have been found to save money in other cities where they have been implemented, such as changing our schedule to a 48-96 rotation, dropping our residency clause, and some wording issues regarding the utilization of our vacation hours and shift trade agreements. I thank you for your time, and I encourage you to communicate with amongst yourselves and the city heads involved in this negotiation, and we ask that you allow us to come to an equally beneficial contract If you have any questions regarding any of these issues, or if you have any, if you need any clarification, please come forth now and I'll try to help you. Otherwise, I can direct you to our negotiators or our association directors.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Chapin. Thank you. Comments, questions?
No,
Okay,
I don't
thanks.
think so. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to the consent agenda. Any council member wish to pull any items for discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda, items 3 through 11.
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
Walker,
Second?
second by Sanders. Is this thing working now?
Yes.
Yes.
It is.
Motion passes 5-0.
I have a number of requests. There's some items that we need to add pursuant to our closed session discussion earlier today, but I'll do that later. I have a number of requests from people that are on the agenda today that wish to come earlier due to other obligations, and I'm going to go ahead and grant those as best we can. We're going to move item 16 and 17 for discussion now. So item 16 is the approval of implementation of the last, best, and final offer for fiscal year 2010-2011 for Teamsters unit, and we have a presentation by our city manager.
Well, actually, I want to ask our, what you have here before you, as prepared by our interim HR director, is last best final offer in the negotiations with the a unit referred to as Teamsters unit, and that item is before you. The process has occurred with the negotiations. Impasse was declared. Impasse meeting was held as provided for in the employer-employee relations resolution. And what you have before you is the best and final offer that was provided to Teamsters 542. Therefore, we're here for that action.
Okay. Thank you. I know that Ms. Duarte would like to address. Can you repeat your name and address for the record, Ruth? For the benefit of the audience, Ms. Duarte is a trustee for the Calexico Unified School District, and she has to attend the Calexico High School graduation, so we understand her need to be able to get out of here early.
Thank you, Mayor Silva. Good afternoon, Mayor Silva, council members, and staff. My name is Ruth Duarte, and I'm representative for Teamsters Local 542, City of El Centro employees. And tonight, you will be making a decision on the impasse. And I come forward to you just to recap what has happened in the past months that we have been negotiating. We have met about 9 times, and we have exchanged proposals. Our dilemma at this point is that why we went into impasse was because, for one, we had exhausted our communication with the city negotiators, and just also because of the first contribution that the city had proposed at the beginning of negotiations. The city wanted the employees to pay the full share, their full share of the contributions to PERS. We do have contract language that states that the city will contribute a maximum of 15% of the employee's salary towards the PERS pension plan. Any excess in the amount will be shared 50-50 basis between the city and the employees covered by this agreement. Now, like the other representative said, these were contracted, signed contracts from before. After we spoke to Mr. Duran, I asked him how much was the employee's contribution. The employee's contribution is at 14.25%. So it's not even at the 15% that had been negotiated in the past. Now, we feel that it is unfair to request or to propose for the employees to pay a full 7% when we have this good language. Now, the employees, as I ratified your last, best, and final, they denied it for the reason being that the language is there, and we have proposed to the city, we'll pay 2.5% of the PERS contribution. We have not said we will not pay anything, but the employees do not want to pay this full 7%. They have gotten earned the burden of the health care also. Next year, it may be about 8% increase. So if you add that, that's 11.5% decrease that they're going to get in pay. They're not getting any merits. From the get-go, we had said, we understand the city's economy. We will agree to no salary increases and merits. We have been working in good faith with the city, but I would like to refer to you to the big proposal offers that we have made from December 14th to February 23rd. If you look at the following page, the PERS retirement, section 3.8 of our contract, the city proposed the 7%, and that was in December 14th. In January 6th, we rejected that proposal. And if you follow through that line, it was never brought back to the table. It was brought back at the last, best, and final. It was not discussed. I did question it on our meeting of the 23rd, and I said, what happened to the PERS? Oh, that's still on the table. So you will see that on March 10th, I put there retirement. Teamsters reject city's proposal. Teamsters will agree to pay as per the current language in the MOU. We moved forward. The city still rejected it. They came back with their last, best, and final, and they wanted the 7%. If you look at the chart, the city has denied everything. We have withdrawn a lot of important items for the members because of the economic situation that the city is in. We understand that. But please understand that these employees are also getting a pay cut, and they're getting an inflation too. So I would propose that, the city came back with a last, best, and final after they had served us with theirs. They changed it. I believe it was at the directive of the council for a 3.5 for 2011 and a 3.5 for 2012. The city turned around and they made that offer, but they made the whole 7% in 1 year. Their offer, and it's in the highlighted one in the back of the pages, it's effective June 28, 2011. We're still in this contract, in this current contract's MOU to pay 3.5. And then June 26 of 2012, which is still the same contracted year, because of their answer was because of payroll purposes, they would want the contribution then. Well, we're talking about still 7% in 1 year. We gave them a rebuttal or a counter to this last, best, and final for a 2.5% for year 2011, and then we bring back, it would be 1 year contract, and we would bring back to the table in 2012. By that time, we would know if RDA has been taken away from the city, and then we know that the city will probably be broke. And then the governor wants to mandate the 7% of the employees' contribution. So by 2012, that may happen, and this may be a moot point. They may have to pay it. But in the meantime, they would like either to honor the wording of the contract or the 2.5 that we made an offer to. So my proposal is direct staff to go back to the table and see if we can come to a medium, because the city truthfully has not moved, to the medium on any item, and negotiating by saying, this is it, take it or leave it, that is not negotiations. That's negotiations in bad faith.
Thank you, Ms. Duarte. Questions from council?
Okay, Mr.
Solomon?
Solomon, I will yield for Mr. Solomon.
You know, whenever I think of a prize fight, you know, people are going into different corners and they come out and they meet. And in our particular case, we were in two different corners and we come out to negotiate. I kind of get the feeling from listening to you that the good faith dealing, going back and forth, was not there. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
There was no movement from the city to come to a medium somewhere.
And then you talked about the last best and final offer, that too was not given to you in a very positive way, because you're saying that it was said you're going to pay the whole amount, 3.5, to make up the 7%, all in 1 year, which was, well,
It's in the year 2011
so
altogether.
you're saying that everything was going to be paid in 2011.
Correct.
Now, this contract that you're talking about, that you had reference to, what is the date on that contract? What's the
The last contract that was actually signed was back in 1998.
Okay, and how
And-
long did that contract go to?
Well, I'm
19
sorry, I got to go back. 1996,
Okay, 1990.
it was a 3-year contract. They got 5% in 96, 3% in 97, and 3% in 98. That was the last salary increase that the employees had, aside from merit increases.
Okay, so when you say this contract, it ended some time ago then?
It was rolled over. I mean, we met at the
Oh.
table and we signed some contracts.
So the city and your organization was 541?
542.
542. For the last few years, the city has been rolling this over, and you have been signing this agreement on a
Yes.
year-to-year type base.
Yes, year to year.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Sanders?
I want to just expand a little bit on those comments that you made and expand my questioning stemming from some of the questions that was posed by Councilmember Solomon. On a year-to-year basis from the 3 years that you had this contract, and you believe that that contract is still in force, and it would be until a new one is signed. Is that your understanding? At least that's my understanding.
Yeah,
Okay.
even if the contract rolls over without a signature or without meeting at the table, it would roll over and it would still be
valid
enforced.
until, yes. And you're of the view, or at least you're certainly implying, that the city did not negotiate in good faith. That's an implication.
Yes.
And that implication is based on the fact that when you received the information regarding a directive that the council gave of saying 3.5% this year and 3.5% in year 2, that you found unacceptable, or what was unacceptable about that?
What
That
was
you would
unacceptable
reject
is the way the proposal was written. June 28, 2011, which would be 2 days or 3 days before the contract expired, they would have to start paying, plus the one for June 26, 2012, that would still be in that year contract, because the contract wouldn't expire till
July.
June 30th, 2012.
Okay. So you...
Can I just expand on that? Because that was going to be my question. I'm sorry, Ms. Sanders, but
Sure, go ahead.
sorry, and that's the question that I was going to have. Ruth, if I look at your handout and I look at the highlighted
Uh-huh.
piece of this. So if instead of June 28th, we would have had July 10th, 14th, whatever
July
the
1.
next pay period window was. And instead of June 26, 12, we would have had July 5, 6, whatever the first pay window in July of 12 is. Would that have made it appealing to you? Because the way I see it, we're only talking about 2 additional pay periods in which employees would pay the 3.5% and the 7%. And I see what you're saying, is that it's being captured within one year, technically. But the fact is that they're a year apart. So if instead of making these effective June of 11 and 12, we would have made it effective July 11 and 12, would that have made it appealing?
I could not tell you because I would have to take it back to the membership to vote it. But the only discrepancy that had was that following getting that proposal, and there's a clip of an email that I received from Ms. Takada, was that they wanted to remove the current language that we have of the maximum of 15%. So with this language, they looked at it and they saw, well, if the language remains and the PERS is still at 14%, they don't have to pay it. And if PERS goes above 15%, that it's estimated to go 15.541 next year, then the employees would have to pay the share cost of the 5.541.
I'm sorry, Sandra, anyone?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So there's two things here, and we feel that it was manipulated in a way where they would still get their 7%, but it would be divided. And I don't know if the employees would go for that.
You're the negotiator for the employees?
Yes.
And so if that information was presented to, no, that's the wrong question. I apologize. That's the wrong question. I apologize for that, because this is not a negotiation process.
No, it's not.
We're not in negotiations with you. We're trying to get information from you as to why the impasse occurred and your feelings about the impasse, and you're providing information to us as to what you think happened in those negotiating process, and whether or not the bargaining unit that you represent would be receptive to the information. So thank you. I have no further questions at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Sanders. Ms. Walker?
I think we'd all agree that these are unprecedented times with regard to the economy. So we can say whatever we want, coulda, woulda, shoulda, years ago when the economy was blowing and going and we were all doing well. I would like to disclose for the record that I did spend about 30 minutes or so on the phone with Ms. Duarte yesterday. Over 2 years ago, the council started looking at the issue with regard to pension reform because we knew what it was slowly dawning on state that pension reform will either be voluntarily adopted by all municipalities in the state of California or it'll be crammed down our throat. And what we tried to do was come up with an articulated position where we could go out to our bargaining units and explain, as is said in one of these articles, we must reverse the damage caused by fairy tale promises that have fattened benefits and pensions to unsustainable levels while ballooning unfunded liability to breathtaking levels. And that is exactly where we found ourselves. At our request, staff has run the numbers for us. CalPERS estimated costs over the next 5 years. It is simply unsustainable for us to continue to keep City Hall open and at the same time continue to absorb the funding cost for the pension benefits. And this isn't our fault. We have PERS sitting in Sacramento, California, that is guaranteeing a 7.5% return on our money. They should be in Vegas if they can do those kind of returns, because that is not anywhere close to reality. So who do you think has to make up that difference? We have to make up the difference. We're not taking this lightly. We're not doing this because it's what we want to do. We're doing it because if we don't, a year from now, 2 years from now, we're going to have 6 employees in this city trying to serve a population of close to 50,000 people. We're all going to have to bite the bullet, rein it in, and do something for pension reform in this city before it's crammed down our throats. And so I think that we all need to take a step back and say, you know what, if I reflect on my longevity with the city, when times were good, I think that we have negotiated fairly, we have negotiated well, we've provided bonuses, we've provided COLAs, we've provided step increases, you name it, we've provided it. And now when we're faced with the economic calamity that we're facing right now, our number one priority is that everybody keeps their job. And with this budget, we're able to do it. And quite frankly, if you pick up any newspaper in any city in this nation, you're going to find very few cities that are able to do that. So I understand the frustration, I understand the anxiety and the disappointment, but it is what it is.
Thank you. Mr. Redney?
Duarte, thank you. You've been very professional in front of the council. This is 13 years that I've been an elected official, 5 on the school board in El Centro and 8 with this city. And negotiations are always difficult. That's why they're called negotiations. The one thing that has always concerned me about negotiations is that we get the facts out on the table. And constantly, as we've heard from yourself and from the previous speaker, we don't get the whole items out there. Earlier you said we have, the employees have not received.
I checked my
No.
records.
We
I just
provided
came
it.
on to Teamsters 3 years
Okay,
ago.
we've had raises. Okay. We've also had bonuses. I don't know how many cities have ever issued bonuses to public employees. Not very many. You know, I think Mrs. Walker alluded to it, but do you know how many employees, since this economy's been down almost 5 years now, right? 2006, maybe 2007, depending when you want to. How many employees have actually been laid off by the city of El Centro?
I don't think none, but some people have retired and they have not
Wait,
been
wait.
replaced.
Okay, granted, and that's a fair statement, because we want the truth to come out. So we have frozen some positions when people have retired. We got to get the fairness and the truth out there. Have we laid off any existing employees?
No,
Okay.
not mine anyways.
Well, Mr. Duran, have we laid off any existing employees in the city? Okay. Truth. Have we furloughed any of your employees that you represent?
No, you haven't.
Okay. Have we furloughed any employees in the city, Mr. Duran? Okay. Now, as Mrs. Walker alluded to, every city in this city, county, state, how many of them? 80%, 90% are laying people off.
I represent all the cities except for Calexico, and I have not faced one city with layoffs or furloughs. And I have been representing for the last 3 years.
Wow. That's impressive. Because they're laying them off all across the state.
But
In
City
every
of Calexico
the
has
city of
faced
Corona, how many
they-
firefighters or police officers did they just lay off a couple of months ago? 40. So, you know, it's not a question of, and I think Mrs. Walker said it very well, it's not a question of we want to take away anything from our employees. We want our employees to have the best. But I don't want 80% of our employees to have no salary cut or no benefits change, while 20% of our employees get laid off. Now, that might be fine for the 80%. And yes, a 5% or 4.5% after tax or a 6% is a tough cut. It's a tough cut for anybody in a time where the economy's tough, jobs are tight, the cost of food, gasoline keeps going up. Okay? I recognize that. For all the employees that you represent, I recognize that, and I represent that for all the employees that the city has. But I do know something. If I was an employee, a full-time employee of this city, I would much rather take a 5 or 6 or 7% cut than to have the guy that works next to me out of a job with no money. The budget is here to be presented tonight. Okay? When I came on this council in 2003 and Mrs. Sanders came back on at that time, Mr. Duran was here for 2 weeks. The first night I was sworn in, welcome to the city council. As you all recall, the city laid off 10% of its entire workforce this past summer. And Mr. Duran's first comments to the new council was, we have a $3.5 million structural deficit This is November of '03, between now and the end of the fiscal year. We're not going to drive the city bankrupt. We're going to do everything in our power to keep every employee hired and on staff and thing. I think it's another point to note is, and you said it, but I think it needs clarification. We're not talking about, let's be very clear, we're not talking about the city not paying the employer's contribution. We're talking about the employee paying their contribution to their retirement, right? Because the city is going to continue to maintain, to pay the employer contribution, just as I do, most employees do. Social Security, FDIC, all those things. We did negotiate those. There were raises, as there are all the negotiations. It ultimately comes down to, do we want to keep the employees employed, or do we want to make choices about keeping a few, 80%, 70%, 90% of the employees and not worrying about the 5, 10, 15, 20% that we would have to lay off? The budget doesn't lie. And I'll go with anybody who wants to go through this budget. A 10% reserve was mentioned. 10% is $5 million in this budget. That's not a hefty. I mean, if you had every money we've got set aside for any car, any emergency, anything, that's not enough.
And Mr. Edney, just so that you don't have to continue, I'm not talking about the budget. I am just saying what Mrs. Cheryl Walker just said. She doesn't want the government to take anything down her throat. Well, we don't want that either. I did not stand here and say we do not want to pay PERS. I proposed a counter offer to the last best and final to put 2.5% at the table. The employees, I'm going out on a limb on this, but the employees said we'll pay something, 2.5. I am requesting for the city to come back and sit down and negotiate again. We don't want a 7% crammed down our throat either. That is unfair. That is unfair. That is a take it or leave it. We are willing to step forward and pay out of pocket for the contributions, and rightfully so. I agree with you. It's employers' contribution, and employees should pay it.
I think that
But-
Go ahead, Ruth.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think everyone has expressed the reality of our fiscal constraints and fiscal reality that we're facing, that it's not going to get any better anytime soon, unfortunately. For my own personal view, Ruth, I felt that the city's willingness the council's willingness to break this into a 2-year window, 3.5 and 3.5, I felt that was adequate. And I was disappointed, frankly, that it wasn't taken, because I think that it softened the shock, because it is a shock. 7% cut reduction, salary reduction is a shock. But I have to concur that I don't see a way where we can continue to do this, given the projections that we see and where we're heading, unless we address this now. And frankly, I hope that not just you, but all the groups that were offered to break this, to make it more palatable, that was rejected. Given that, I concur that if that offer was rejected, then we should go back and go with the 1-year window, which is our last best and final. I don't know enough about negotiations to know whether this was good faith or bad faith. I have to believe staff when they tell me that everything was done in good faith. And I hope that we can work this out. It doesn't sound like we will. But no, I was disappointed that it wasn't, the 2-year window was not accepted. Additional comments, Mr. Solomon?
The only other thing that I'd like to add to that is the fact that, when you say last, best, and final offer, and it's brought before the city council, it is indeed the last, best, and final offer. I mean, that's what it is. And that's the reason why they call it that. And so there are no other things that we can do. I mean, that's past that stage now. When we made an offer, and I can understand that there was some confusion or whatever it was. Since I wasn't there, I can't really say. But when it comes to us and they have it like this, that's kind of a locked-in situation for us.
Let me just say that, allow me to say
Go ahead.
that their last best and final was modified. And
Who are you, when you say they, who are you talking
the
about?
city. The city. They had served us with the last best and final at negotiations meeting, and then through the email, they sent us the modified. We didn't even meet at the table, and that was the one that they wanted me to
And
ratify.
what was the modified
Which-
version?
The modified version was the 3.5 and 3.5. And I understand all your points, very well taken, we understand that, but we still feel that giving us no option is not negotiations. And the option right now was 3.5 and 3.5 in the same year. That was the option. I cannot sign anything like that. I cannot sell it to my members like that. And tonight, that's the proposal that you're going to be signing now goes back to the 7. So in essence, modification was you take the 3.5 and 3.5, or we revert back to the 7. That is not negotiations. That's a take it or leave it.
Mr. Ortido, you said earlier you met 9 times. So it's only fair to suggest that there was negotiation. Whether you like the way they went, it's not fair to say we never met, we one time and you threw us a 3.5 and a 3.5 and then you went back to the 7. That's not
No, sir,
true.
that's not what I said.
Yeah,
What I
that's
said is
exactly
that
what
the
you were saying.
beginning initial proposal, the 7% was presented. In January, we rejected it. It never came back to the table again until the last best and final.
Okay, and I just want to clarify one point. From a technical standpoint, as Mr. Silva, the mayor, tried to explain, the contract said June 28th, 2011, 3.5%, the proposal, and June 26, 2012. Now, you are technically correct. That is within 365 days. But it is almost a year. It's 362 days, correct?
It's still within the contracted
well,
year.
okay, but a year is either 364 or 365, okay? This is 362. So when you try to suggest that they're putting it on you in a year, it is 50 weeks, approximately, between the increases. Is that fair to say, ma'am?
It's fair to say. It's fair to say.
I think that before we allow you to leave the podium, we would just like to stress that, yes, this is no one individual is at fault for what kind of fiscal calamity we find ourselves in. I think Ms. Walker spoke about it. The PERS actuarial is suggesting that they will receive a huge percentage in increase, and that did not materialize. Many factors took place for that not to become a reality. One, of course, is when the stock market plummeted and housing plummeted. All of those were the investors that did not follow through with the funds that they anticipated they would get from the retirement. I wish there was some way that the employees would have been receptive to the offer. This council struggled long and hard to actually get to the point of suggesting a 3.5 in year 1 and in year 2011 and 3.5 in 2012. I wish there was some other way that we would be able to appeal this to your employees or to your members that you represent.
Well, it's just, as the proposal is like this, I know that Mr. Silva said some modifications as changing the dates, but we need to go back to the table in order to do that.
Well, you can't do it, we can't do it here.
That's right.
It would require going back to the table to change the dates.
Correct.
And so
Mr. Riley?
I'm ready for,
Before Mr. Adney makes a motion, Mr. Duarte, again, I was disappointed when I heard that the group did not accept the 3.5 and 3.5, and I understand the technicality, which I do see it as a technicality only, because I think that, if it was July to July instead of June to June, would you have, would the group would have accepted it? You don't know, because I guess the question was never asked. I think that would have been a really good counter to come back with.
It would have, but it didn't. It came straight to you.
Okay. But you had an opportunity to counter
We did.
the
We
3.5 to, what was the counter?
The 2.5 this year, 1-year contract.
That is the case. So there wouldn't be any benefit to ask the group to reconsider the 3.5 and 3.5.
I don't know, Mr. Silva, maybe if I take it back to them, but you would have to direct staff to meet me at the table again. I can say for myself that anything other than 7 is maybe better, but I can't make the agreement
Okay.
in this setting.
So hard, this is a hard, because the council struggled so hard as a unit, and I think it needs to be clarified, this was a unit, the council as a unit in its entirety wanted to see something that would benefit the employees over a 2-year period. And not only was Mr. Silva disappointed, I think I could speak for at least myself, we were quite frankly all disappointed. And now that all of this has come out in the open, and to say to direct staff to go back, it appears as though it is a form of some kind of a negotiations. And that's where I'm struggling with this, and I need a little help, Mr. Silva, if you will, from the attorney. I think this puts us in an awkward position here, because it looks as though there's some kind of negotiation going on here. And this is not, as you know, Mrs. Duarte, this is not the environment for negotiating.
What options does the council have, Mr. Hernandez?
Well, you can either accept the Teamster proposal as presented or the management proposal as presented. Now, if there were a way, if it was just a matter of a few minor details to be worked out, then you can refer it back to staff to negotiate the contract, which you have done in the past. But it sounds like there was a great divide in terms of a meeting of the mind, so it seems that your options are as presented by staff in the report.
The great divide is the meeting of the minds is that it's a full percentage point. It's not a matter of just a few days, as was brought forth by Mr. Edney. Mr. Edney talked about 50 weeks versus 52, but this seems like it's more than that, Mrs. Duarte. You're talking about, it's not just a few days. It's this percentage point. You wanted your counter was 2.5. So,
Mr. Mayor, if you will, I am very uncomfortable sitting here and negotiating. I think the city attorney provided us a choice. We can either accept management's proposal, last, best, and final. We could accept the Teamsters represented proposal, or we can ask staff to go back and open negotiations. I think we've had a thorough listening from the representative from the Teamsters, and I think each council member, I would be prepared to make a motion if you're willing to accept it.
Please.
Approval of resolution number 11
she doesn't have the
dash
numbers.
whatever.
The appropriate number.
The appropriate number added. Resolution of the City Council of the City of El Centro implementing the changes in wages, hours, and terms and conditions of employment for employees represented by Teamsters Local 542 for the fiscal year 2010-2011.
Moved by Ennis, second by Walker. Just before we vote, though, I'm going to say that I'm going to vote no on the motion, not because I disagree with the necessity of the city to collect the employees' portion of the retirement, but I think that there could have been some value to go back and try to get the 3.5%. Please ballot.
Motion failed?
Did someone,
Okay.
what is it,
Motion failed.
three,
Yeah,
two?
motion failed.
So is somebody ready to make another motion?
Okay, then, Mr. Mayor, I would move that based upon the struggle that we've had today, and with the comments that were being made by every member of the city council, that we send this back to staff to see whether or not something can come forth that would be in keeping with our commitment to our employees at the 3.5 and 3.5 over a 2-year period.
Second to that?
Will this be brought back by the next meeting?
It would have to be brought back by the
hold on.
21st.
I,
I can't answer that question at this time.
If it's not possible to be brought back by the 21st, then the motion is null and void because we are running against the
Well,
time.
you can make your motion to request that it be brought back.
That'd be brought back.
They've met 8 times according to staff, 9 times according to Ms. Duarte.
That's true. But maybe what was also stated, it was in that 9th time that the proposal for the 3.5 and 3.5 was actually presented.
Ms., we're wondering if we have the opportunity to go into closed session with regard to this item.
Well, only in terms of labor negotiations, not as opposed with regard to the actual consideration of the impasse.
Okay?
We have no inconvenience coming back on the 21st.
Well, my motion did not include that, so Mrs. Duarte, so at this point, you would have to allow the council to come to that conclusion. And so my motion, Mr. Mayor, would include that it be brought back. And if it cannot be brought back, then it would all be for naught.
My comment about not sure if it comes back is whether, I'm not clear whether or not the employee-employee relations resolution will require a second impasse hearing or a fact-finding that the council gives now says that you only have this one opportunity, and if there's not a requirement, then we bring back this item again.
Okay.
That's what I'm unclear about, is the employee-employee relations resolution.
So we could be triggering the whole
Well,
impasse
I
hearing
don't
and all
know
the
that
rest
one
of
because
that
I've-
again and dragging this out several more
And
months.
they're checking.
Well, I would trust that that would not be the case, and certainly we are going to hear from the city attorney to clarify for us whether or not we've triggered some kind of
Yeah, the concern would be that if you meet and don't reach an agreement, you'd have to reinitiate the impasse proceeding again.
which would
And
take
if-
us beyond the potentially beyond the 21st.
Well, however long it takes.
Okay, we've got
So-
we've got an impasse.
So, tell me again, please, what's wrong with the motion that Ms. Sanders made?
Well, once you refer back to staff to negotiate, then theoretically, if they don't reach an agreement, you have to reinitiate the impasse proceedings again.
And that means what?
Well, there would be a meeting with myself, we schedule a second meeting once the
It just drags.
declaration by either side is that there is impasse, then there would be a meeting with the employee relations officer, which is myself, and there we'd go over the best and final offer, see if there was any way or any alternatives to either fact-finding, mediation, or coming back to the city council. Then that would be scheduled at the next available city council meeting, and you would have this presentation again.
And that's not doable by 21st?
I think it's impossible. For the
Impossible.
simple reason is, there would be at least 3 meetings in there in the 2-week period, and we have not been able to, well, first of all, staff would need direction from the city council in a separate closed session, because otherwise, the negotiator only has certain authority, and that authority is in the best final offer. So the council would have to direct in closed session what that authority is,
Okay.
be presented to Teamsters or any other unit, and they'd have the opportunity to go talk to their members. They would meet again. If there was still impasse, then it would go through the impasse process of notification, and then we'd be back to the council again.
We started this process with the Teamsters back in
December.
December. Oh.
6 months.
So I mean, just what I give you is that, give you expectations is, I don't believe, with that process required, I don't see how we can do that in a 2-week period just because, well, none of the meetings have been able to go that quickly because other people are involved outside of,
If staff-
who's right at the podium and at the dais and here.
And if this is not resolved by June 30th, what does that mean?
It
June
continues.
28th. June 28th. So we need to resolve, this needs to be resolved by the 21st of June, when we meet again. Our next meeting, our next regular meeting.
But understand, is that,
But, Ms. Senator,
negotiations don't, unless you go to impasse, don't allow for that,
There's no
madam.
direction.
That's, he
Okay,
doesn't
I
have the
just want to
direction.
just make a point, if you don't mind. I'm concerned because I think this thing has gotten a little bit off hand. We have had staff representing the wishes of this city council negotiate for 7 months. Okay? And we have gotten convoluted into this 3.5 being the option, and quite honestly, that's not an option. That is not even close to being on the table. And we've bogged down on something that does not in any way mirror a proposal from the representatives of the union. So we've discussed that here tonight about the dates of July. We can only go with what's in front of us. We have a last best and final that this city put together, and we have the final proposal by the Teamsters. And theirs is 2.5% over a 1-year contract. It's not 2.5 and 2.5. It's not 2.5 and 4.5. It's not 2.5 and everything. It's 2.5 and a 1-year contract. So to suggest that we're going to go back and solve this in 1 or 2 weeks that we've worked on for 7.5 months is quite honestly just opening up a whole can of worms. I would ask that we reconsider the motion.
I thank you for your comments, Mr. Edney, and I understand the passion, and I think we all feel this kind of passion for our particular side of the issue. However, I know what's on the table, and I thank you for pointing that out for me. I also know what we had collectively decided we would want to present. They rejected it. I'm accepting that. I'm accepting that it was rejected by the Teamsters and their representative, Mrs. Duarte. I'm accepting that fact. I'm also looking at a way that we might be able to do something. And if it cannot be done within the next 2 weeks, then it cannot be done. I have no idea. We have not given staff any directive. We can do that in a closed session environment. The city attorney is sharing with us that we can make some slight changes, but what's currently on the table is quite significant, and that is a difference of 1 full %. So we can, my motion is dead because I didn't get a second, so.
Rob,
Oh, okay. Did you second?
is there a second? Can you repeat your motion, Ms. Sanders?
I will make an attempt. I may need a little help, because I was suggesting, well, the motion is to send this back to staff and have them review, meet with the representative of the Teamsters, have information back to us, if possible, by the 21st of June.
What if it's not possible?
Then we will know something by the 21st of June, if it's not possible. And I think that they're sharing with us, that poses a huge dilemma for the finance department, because the 28th of June is when the next pay period is.
If I may, and then we'll take the direction of the council. We want to have a closed session as quickly as possible because we have already had 2 other impasses with similar direction.
I'm sorry?
We've already had 2 other units go to impasse with similar direction. So we'll want to go to, at the end of this council meeting, I would ask for a special closed session for new direction. Otherwise, we're going to be in exactly the same position with the other units that are coming forward the following meeting.
For the 21st?
Yes. We already have offers to units, and some of those units are here, came to listen to how this was going. We would have to have direction of what your offers were on those ones that we've already gone through impasse. I caution you because, well, this is very complicated. You don't do it very often. or make sure that you're aware of, to manage your expectations of what will this take as we go forward.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, Mr. Duran, you're sharing with the council that the ramifications may be, instead of me thinking that this is a small pebble that'll be rolling forward, it could be a boulder?
Well, it's setting the direction to our negotiators of what to make offers, and because we've had a number of impasses, you only have this one here. You have at least two more, plus potential settled contracts with your other direction. We're really changing the offer, and I just want to make you aware that you've made that the offers that were provided to other units.
Okay, so that I'm clear, that you're sharing with the council that the dynamics of the motion that I put forward would be far more complex than the simplicity of what I am trying to present it.
I'm not trying to sway your emotion. It was just that there is a ripple effect. Yes, the negotiations were based on direction. Now, whether or not that direction is going to be consistent with the units, we'll need that direction very quickly here.
It sounds like it's going to complicate things significantly, and it's going to ripple or have other
Now,
consequences.
could I provide some information also for clarity? Because first one is, Mr. Duarte, it's being at a podium is difficult. The contract, the last contract, the current contract expired June 30th, 2010, 11 months ago. The first year, the 2-year contract we're talking about tonight expires the end of this month. And then if we had a 2-year contract, it would expand next year. So let's talk about the Teamsters best and final offer. Their contract, that has the 7%, will expire June 30th. So fairly quickly here, we'll need to be into negotiations again with Teamsters, because their contract, was what you had before you, is a 1-year contract that expires June 30th, 2011.
Well, then let me do this, Mr. Mayor.
So I just want to make sure
Let me
we know what we're
withdraw
talking.
the motion. As I understand it, they're going to be back to negotiation within a few short months for the next year contract anyway. Is that your understanding, Mr.
Well,
Duarte?
as soon as
I
we-
will withdraw my motion with the understanding, in order to maintain some semblance of consistency, that's one of my favorite words, and some semblance of the same time looking out and not clearly understanding what may have taken place in those negotiating rooms. I can say this quite emphatically. I was quite disappointed, Mrs. Duarte, that the bargaining unit chose not to accept the offer. The council went through quite a bit of soul searching in order to present that to staff, to our negotiators. We're now going to go forward, and this one will end, and then in a year, we'll be back. So while I have come full circle now,
Okay.
and if I do any more, I'll kiss myself.
The motion, the motion has been withdrawn, correct? And the second as well?
Motion has been withdrawn.
Mr. Edney asked for a reconsideration of his initial motion. You want to make that motion again, Mr. Edney?
I would make the motion, approve a resolution of the City Council, City of El Centro, implementing the changes in wages, hours, terms, and conditions of employment for employees represented by Teamsters Local 542 for the fiscal year 2010-2011.
I want to, thank you. Motion by Edney, second by, I'm going to reluctantly vote yes this time because
this
of
is
the
reluctantly.
ramifications of not approving it.
This is a reluctant vote, but sometimes one have to take a stand. And
Okay.
I tried to do it every reaction,
Please
but
ballot.
I wasn't successful.
Motion passes 5-0.
Enjoy the commencement
Mayor,
exercise.
She's
should
still
we
got-
just-
She's got one more.
I have one.
Oh, yeah, we have one more.
Let's also take out of order item number
I'm gonna ask for it.
17, this request of appeal from Teamsters Local 542. We have a presentation by Mr. Duran.
Yes, this is there was a process that occurred in March of each year under the Employers Relations Resolution that allows for modifications of units. And by the way, there are several of these requests that came through, and what we have here is one that's an appeal. And the appeal process occurs is once the request has been made, and if the modification is approved by the Employee Relations Officer, which is myself, I hate doing that in the third person, but it's no other way to do it, then it's done. example is within the Teamsters group, there was several employees who wished to go to the water bargaining unit. That was approved, and those folks have moved over to the bargaining unit, to that bargaining unit. There were individuals who requested to go to the general employees bargaining unit. That was also approved. The Teamsters, which is the, if you will, the home bargaining unit, so you can keep track of all this. I'll wait. I wanna lose you.
I'm sorry, we're passing.
This is a winding trail I'm trying to take you on, because again, it only happens once a year and it rarely happens. So in March is the only time that modifications of unit can occur. So there was a request to modify the bargaining unit of Teamsters, and it was, I'm going to ask Ms. Brownlee to come up if she can, because she's going to get my numbers right. We had a total of, I believe, 9, Ms. Brownlee, 10 that were asked for transfers to different units from Teamsters. How many went to water?
4.
4 went to the water, and that was approved. 4, and those individuals requesting modification. 4, and then the other 6 requested to go to general employees. That was approved. The Teamsters requested appeal of the decision of the individuals going to general employees, and that is why you're here today. My approval process was very much, I approved both of them. The resolution allows for employees to request to go to different units. And by the way, there were 3 separate actions. One of them has unrelated to these units at all, and that was also approved. So we approved those. We feel that it is, there is no significant dilemma for these individuals being in different units, and here's where we're at. Now, if Ms. Brownlee, you want to follow up anything else on the process, because I want to make sure, you've never been through this process, or
May I ask a clarifying
it
question?
rarely occurs.
Okay, rarely occurs, have not been through the process. We're talking about 10 employees. 4 went to water, 6 went to the general employees category.
Yes,
The appeal before us, though, is only for the 6 employees.
that's correct.
So are we anticipating a second appeal for the other 4
There's-
employees?
We have no objections to the other 4. To the 4 that went to the water department, we have no objections. They match their category.
Okay,
We have no objections.
okay, so that's not like a preview of coming attractions. Okay, got it. Okay.
So
Thank you.
the action, Ms. Brownlee, anything else on, so the action requested is, what's been requested by the Teamsters is to overturn my decision on it, which you have the authority to do for, and that's why the appeal process occurs. But I also want to give you the background. My reasoning for authorizing it was, I believe it was in the parameters of the resolution, and therefore, as I said, I indicated to both groups, yes, you can go to the other units. And March is when they can do that. Individuals who have applied in the wrong months, they get denied because they must do it in March. And it's to keep people coming up every 2 weeks and asking for modification.
Thank you, Mr. Duran. Ms. Duarte?
Okay, Ruth Duarte, representative for Teamsters. I come forward to you tonight because we are appealing the modifications. Ms. Walker, you asked about the 4 water in the water department. We don't have any objections to that. The only thing that we feel is that the ERA says that there has to be 30% signatures for a decertification, and basically that's what these employees did. They decerted from Teamsters. Back a couple of months ago, we had agency shop election, and we won. We successfully won. After the election, a couple of days later, there was some employees that were non-Teamsters passing a petition around for employees to sign out of Teamsters and go into the water unit. Unfortunately, some of our members did sign to go out of Teamsters. Now, my reasoning for this is that they did not want to pay dues. Some of these were paying dues already. They had been members of Teamsters. They signed the petition, they take it to HR and to the city, and city approves them. Okay? Then they call the water unit, bargaining unit, and the clerical unit to let them know that these people will be transferred. Now, nobody ever asked us is this okay with Teamsters? We are a recognized bargaining unit. It should have come to us at least and asking, is this okay? Are you guys okay with it? Of course, we would have said no at the time. But one thing that I don't understand, just to make the long story short, is that some of these bargaining unit members that were transferred, I still represent some of those titles in my unit. So therefore, the city is not doing modifications. The city divided the union.
So, let me just make sure before you go any further. What you're saying is the city moved these people, and they still wind up in your sections.
The classifications are still in mine.
Okay.
The classifications are still in mine. Now, the city had sent a letter to the clerical unit that they would be modified to general employees unit. Why? Because my members did not qualify for the clerical. Definitely they had to be changed. The title would have been changed because they don't belong to the clerical. Clerical could not negotiate for them. They have standby language. They have on-call language in the contract, which clerical didn't have. Now, as my understanding, clerical had voted with their unit, and they said that they didn't want the employees onto the clerical unit, nonetheless changed their bargaining unit name. Nevertheless, the city went ahead and did it so that our members could go in there. Now, we feel that it is an unfair labor practice for doing this because at one, we weren't asked. And number two, we had already won the agency shop. People voted, they had their voice. Because they did not win the agency shop, they decided to get out. If they would have come before the agency shop to me and said, you know what, I want to be transferred somewhere else, maybe I could have made the transfer. But because we had already won the agency shop, and this happened after because of the March 31st date, everything went really, really quick. So we still have some action to be done as to the general employees unit coming on board to Teamsters because they also wanted to come to Teamsters. That's on hold right now until we fix these 6 employees. Now, in the water unit, we still have, if you see the list that I gave you, the highlighted employees are the ones that have been transferred out. The ones in the water and sewer unit, if you can see, there's only 2 of them that were 4, you can't really see, but it's the 4 that are highlighted. The rest of them are still in my bargaining unit. It's very hard to see because it's kind of dark in here. But then the other ones, the street maintenance, under street maintenance, I still have 3 employees in my unit. So how can you have a MOU with the classification? I'm not even talking about employees now. I'm talking about the classification in my MOU and have them in the water MOU, same classification. That is against EERA law policy. The classification has to be within the bargaining unit.
Okay, so let me see if I got this right. You go through an agency shop election and you prevail. Afterwards, 10 people that were part of that group wish to leave. 4 of them do, and you don't have a problem with them leaving. 6 of them, you do have a problem because the classifications that they work under do not fit the general employees unit. And you have, I'll just use one, you have a chief mechanic that wants to leave Teamsters, and you have other chief mechanics somewhere else that are part of Teamsters. Mechanics. And the division of classification within different units is, according to what you're saying, is against some kind of rule.
Well, let's just say that in the clerical unit, in my bargaining unit, I don't have any clerical.
Okay. And the general
Because-
employees unit voted not to accept them, correct?
Excuse me?
The-
That's on hold. I think that's.
No, they're unrelated, I'm going to reject. Those are unrelated actions to this appeal.
Okay.
Yeah, and I only brought it up because the clerical wanted to come into Teamsters, and my members went into the clerical unit. That's,
And personally, I can kind of see it, that if you vote for an agency shop, and if it's that easy for people to just leave, then
Why
what's the
have
value?
it?
What's the value? Yeah, I can
Why have it?
understand that. Any other questions? Anything else?
Well, yeah, Mr.
Let
Mayor,
me see if Ms. Duarte is done. Are you done, Ms. Duarte?
yeah.
Okay, Mr. Edney?
I guess, you know, your last point, I guess I can see your point, you know, you have an election, you lose, but, so, the 6 employees that are in question of this wanted to go out of the Teamsters.
They were members when they voted.
That's not my question. They wanted out.
They signed the petition. I don't know what they were told during the
Whatever
petition,
reason.
for
We
whatever
don't know.
reason.
I'm not asking you, and I'm not
But
blaming
not all of them were members.
Okay, because it was
I believe
an open
only-
shop at the time.
I believe only 2 were members, the other 4 were not.
So, okay, six members
Mm-hmm.
want to go out of the Teamsters, okay? So, and I think the mayor makes a valid point, but so we're going to force an employee of the city to stay in a bargaining unit that he has no desire to be in. And that's a bad thing?
Well-
What do we do?
That's exactly-
We force
Well,
people to
they
do
don't
certain
have,
things?
they don't have to be members. They can be other, but they have to, an agency shop
Have to
is.
pay their dues.
They have to pay something. They have to pay something. If those employees would have come to me beforehand and said, Ruth, I don't want to go through the agency shop, I want out, that would have been fine.
Okay.
But
let me-
these
let me ask you
members,
this.
I'm only going to talk about the 2 members. They were at all my meetings. They were at my negotiation meetings. They were everywhere. They were partaking on everything
Fair
for
enough.
Teamsters.
The 6 people that wanted to move out, they obviously don't want to pay dues or whatever issue they had, okay? So, if we deny this, if we accept your appeal, I guess, they go back into your bargaining unit, theoretically, and they stay there forever, paying dues, even though they don't want to have anything to do with you.
Until
Until when?
until the 30,
Until there's another vote?
until the 30% of employees sign a petition to desert Teamsters. And I think that is my whole point, is that the city did not have 30% in order to take out these 6 employees. I represent 49 employees. There was only 6 that wanted to get out,
Okay.
and the city allowed them to get out.
Mr. Duran, or Mr. Hernandez, a legal part of this,
I
not
would
the emotional
defer
part.
to our legal.
You have the ERA there.
The Myers-Milius-Brown Act.
I'm sorry, we're going through the ERA
I'm
because that
sorry,
is what
please
the...
don't interrupt our attorney.
I'm sorry, but that's what you guys had stated in your letter.
The Myers-Milius-Brown Act at Government Code Section 3507.1A confirms that unit determinations and representation elections shall be determined and processed in accordance with the rules adopted by the public agency. The city adopted its employer-employees relations ordinance via resolution number 02-71 in 2002. Section 11 of the EERO addresses the city processing of unit modifications or severance requests. Each of these individuals requested to be severed. Section 7 says that March is the appropriate time to do it, so the severance petitions were timely. And then it goes on to say that the employee relations officer shall give written notice of the proposed modifications to any affected employee organizations and hold a meeting concerning the proposed modifications, at which time all affected employee organizations shall be heard. It's my understanding that that process was followed. If you go to Section 8 of the EERO, it talks about the policy and standards for determination of appropriate units. subsection E of Section 8 confirms that the city can divide a single classification among 2 or more units as long as it considers the other factors set forth in A, B, C, and D, which, again, is my understanding that was done. Now, it's going to be difficult for the city to track members of the same classification in different units, which is why perhaps it's not best practice to do so, but it's appropriately done pursuant to the city's EERO.
Thank you, Ms. Becker. That concludes my question, Mr.
Thank you,
Silverman.
Mr. Edney. Any questions? Mr.
Yeah.
Solomon?
You were pointing towards something else over there that you wanted him to take a look at. Which supersedes?
I'm sorry.
They're going by what the city is saying, and then that's fine. Right. I just want to make sure that we have this right. Does the state or federal government, which one is that she has record?
No, the EERO is the Employee-Employer Relations Resolution of the City of El Centro that's adopted by the City Council, and that's done pursuant to the Myers-Milius-Brown Act,
Okay, so
which is...
We superseded everybody else.
No, according to, it's linked back to the MM. It's
Pursuant
linked back the other one.
to the Myers-Milius-Brown Act, we have the authority, the City Council has the authority to adopt an employer-employee relations resolution, which you've done, and empower the employer-employee relations officer, who's the city manager, to act in certain ways and consistent with the resolution. And as indicated by the associate attorney, that appears to have taken place here. So,
All I was trying to find out was, she had mentioned, when Mr. Durant asked her to please hold tight for a second, she was talking about something that she wanted read. But what we read was what the city has, and that's fine. I just want to make sure what she was trying to have read doesn't supersede anything that we have. That's all.
I wanted to make sure we were on the same page.
And what
we
she
are.
read, you have in front, you don't have item in section 11, but they stated on their letter, section 7. And section 7 says, proof of employee support, item D, proof of employee support that at least 30% of the employees in the established appropriate unit no longer desire to be represented by the incumbent exclusive recognized employee organization. 30%. Now, on section 8 that Ms. Becker was reading, policy and standards for determination of appropriate units, item number A, or item letter A, similarity of the general kinds of work performed, types of qualifications required, and general working conditions. When this was done, the unit was clerical unit, not general employees unit. B, history of representation in the city and similar employment, except, however, that no unit shall be deemed to be an appropriate unit solely on the basis of extent to which employees in the proposed unit have recognized.
Okay. So you're saying that this is the information that you got in a letter?
Yes.
Okay, I'm saying, did we write her that letter? She's saying that she's received some information from us that outlines that section.
If we could have the
You
podium.
have the letter in front of you. It's dated April 28th.
We have it?
Yes.
Yes.
It's in your packet.
It's part of our backup. But it was sent from a city staff person, or HR.
Yeah.
Right?
It's the Office of City Manager. It doesn't have a signature, but I take it it's by, from
Mr.
Mr.
Durant
Duran.
signed the letter.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's from Mr. Duran. And it has all 10
All 10 of the issues.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Duarte.
10 units.
Council Field, did you hear enough?
Well,
Let-
here's my struggle. If I'm a member of a club, and I don't want to be a member of that club anymore, and so I leave, and I want to leave. I voluntarily say I want to go. And that club says, no, you must remain a member. I have a struggle with that, because I think we need to honor the employees as long as we do it within the legal parameters of what the city has in place. I think we need to honor the wishes of the employees that want to leave. I think you bring up, Ms. Duarte, a larger issue, and that is whether or not the city needs to go back and evaluate whether or not these rules and regulations are still considered best practices. I think that's a separate issue. But I think for me, I need to be mindful of how I would feel if I was an employee who asked to leave and then was told, no, you have to stay.
Ms. Walker, let me...
I would agree with that, Cheryl, but to me, the difference is that the vote of a group to pass, I don't know what the right term is, but to accept the agency shop, it's binding. It should be binding on the group, whether you agree with that or not. If the majority of the people agree to become agency shop, that is a binding agreement that you have with your bargaining group, and it makes no sense to me that people have the ability to say, no, I didn't like that vote, so I'm going to go somewhere else.
Okay, but here's the other thing that I don't understand. Why are we only then contesting 6 and not all 10?
Because the other 4 have similarities to the water. They do have similarities to them. They work at the water plant. So they do have similarities. They work at their maintenance. They're not operators, but they still work there. So if that would be the case, we would have lost those 4 anyways, because they do have similarities to what Section 7 says. Now, when I first started here with Teamsters in City of El Centro, there was 8 members. 2 were participating. Within the 2 years I was here, it increased to 30 members. And those 30 members said, we want agency shop because it is not fair for us to be paying and the non-members getting the benefits. That is why we said we're going to go agency shop. Everybody was very well informed about the agency shop. They were aware of the agency shop. Never did they come forward and say, we want to move out. Okay. So I just wanted to say that. I thank you.
The Council Hill, that you've heard enough, that we still haven't scratched the agenda yet.
You have a long meeting.
So is there additional comments? Somebody ready to make a motion on this?
I'll move city manager recommendation to uphold the decision of the employee relations officer to allow the transfer of the 6 employees from Teamsters Local 542 to the general employee.
Okay. Moved by Walker, second by Edney. Any additional questions, comments? No? Please ballot.
This is...
Motion fails.
Okay. What are the wishes of the council?
Thank you very much.
Before,
Well, I think you need to take affirmative action to rescind the
action of the employer, you need to take action to rescind and approve the request of the Teamsters. We need that.
You need to approve the appeal.
Affirmative action.
Okay. Is that a motion?
Yes.
Can you state the motion as it needs to be stated?
You need to rescind the employee relations officer's recommendation or decision to uphold the transfer of the employees and to indicate that they are to remain in the Teamsters.
So move.
Moved by Sanders, second by Solomon. Please ballot.
Motion passes.
Okay. Does the council wish to take a break, or do we move forward?
Yes.
Let's take
Thank
a
you,
5-minute
council
break.
members.
Thanks.
2 hours at this.
Adjourn back. For the record, I'll say that Ms. Sanders had to step away temporarily. She'll be joining us in about 10 minutes, probably. Let's move on to, I also have a request for items 21 and 22 to be pulled earlier. People, I think, have to leave back to San Diego or other areas, so let's go ahead and do that. Let's do item number 21, public hearing to approve the engineer's report regarding Legacy Ranch landscaping and lighting district and the levy and collection of assessment. We'll have a presentation by our Director of Finance.
I don't think Irma heard. She's focused.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. On an annual basis, we determine the levy and collection based on a budget for the assessment based on an engineer's report for the Legacy Ranch Landscape and Lighting District. According to this engineer's report and the budget, we are allowed an annual assessment of $421. And the recommendation with this agenda is to maintain the annual assessment at $416 a year. This is an annual, on an annual basis. It's a public hearing to approve the engineer's report and also to approve a resolution approving the engineer's report regarding the Legacy Landscape and Lighting District.
Thank you, Ms. Salcido.
Yes.
Comments from council? Yes. Not yet. This is a public hearing. Any member of the audience that wishes to provide testimony on this item? Okay, I'll close the public hearing. Bring it back to council.
This is an annual item. I don't think there's anything of great significance or surprise from prior years. With that, I'd move approval of resolution number, whatever,
11.
approving the engineer's report regarding Legacy Ranch Landscaping and Lighting District and the levy and collection of assessments related thereto, commencing in fiscal year 11-12.
Moved by Walker, seconded by Solomon. Please ballot.
Mr. Mayor, I will be abstaining. I didn't hear the, enough of the discussion.
Thank you.
I guess, yeah. Thank you.
Motion passes with Sanders abstaining.
Thank you. Let's move on to item 22, public hearing to approve the engineer's report regarding the Buena Vista Landscaping and Lighting District and the levy and collection of assessments. Ms. Salcido?
It's basically the same thing on an annual basis. We determine the levy and collection based on a budget and an engineer's report. And today, actually, the maximum amount of the levy is $142. This year, we would like to maintain it at $71.40 due to the strong reserves. And again, we're asking, this is a public hearing to approve the engineer's report, and we're asking for your approval of the resolution approving the engineer's report regarding the Buena Vista Landscape and Lighting District.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Salcido. This is a public hearing. Any member of the audience that wishes to provide testimony on this item? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council.
Move approval of resolution number 11 resolution of City Council, City of El Centro approving the engineer's report regarding Buena Vista Landscaping and Lighting District, levy and collection of assessments related to thereto for fiscal year 11-12.
Second.
Moved by Walker, second by Sanders. Please ballot.
Motion passes.
Okay, let's go back now to item number 12. Approval of letter to Board of Supervisors concerning the Desert Springs Resort and the Naval Air Facility El Centro. Presentation by Mr. Duran.
Oh, I'm sorry. Right, there was an added item that we're, please state your question, your comment.
Item number 12.
Well, this is
The letter?
the letter. This is the letter associated with the support of the action of the Naval Air Facilities on maintaining its operation and the concerns associated with the Desert Springs Resort. Oh, thank you. This letter would be going to the entire Board of Supervisors. The Desert Springs Resort is a proposed project that is west of the Naval Air Facility, the El Centro Naval Air Facility, and as we're very concerned about the continued operation, one from impacting the mission of the organization, and also impacting the potential ongoing operation and the possible expansion of the program with the F-35 program. So it's really multiple issues here. Having experienced the closure of Williams Air Force Base and North Island and other bases that have closed through encroachments, this is a serious concern on all of our parts. We have met separately, or my staff with the Naval Air Commander and his staff, talk about the impact of this project. While we certainly encourage tourism, there's a lot of places to place these kind of programs, but not on the end of the runway. For council members and folks who have been able to take in a familiarization tour out on one of the aircraft carriers, the ability to have possible as dark skies as possible at the end of that runway is critical for the training of carrier landing. From here, they go to the carrier. There is no transition. So having light sources that give you a sense of horizon ruins that training. Also, there's potential impact to some of the ranges. And what makes this facility so popular, as most recently with the British attack helicopters, these ranges are rather unique. They're close to the base, and it's generated a significant amount of payroll spent in our community. And that's not just El Centro. That's throughout the valley. These naval folks, they live all over, particularly Imperial, you'll find them, and in El Centro living. They don't all live on base. So the request of this letter is to indicate to the Board of Supervisors these concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Duran. Comments from council?
I believe this item actually is on the Planning Commission agenda for tomorrow's meeting at the Board of Supervisors. So I think that we need to figure that out. If it is in fact on the agenda, I would propose that this letter be hand-delivered and that we also have a representative present. If it is on the agenda, I think we need to have a representative present. If it is the will of the council to move forward with this letter, to present a copy of the letter at that hearing, or at least notify the Planning Commission, the Imperial County Planning Commission, that it's coming. I'd also recommend that we hand deliver the copies of the letter to the Board of Supervisors tomorrow. With regard to the final paragraph, I think that it would be my preference to see a much more strongly worded paragraph, as opposed to we would like to propose some discussion. I think we should emphatically state that our council task force members request a meeting with representatives from the Board of Supervisors to discuss the significant impact of the proposed Desert Springs Resort on the Naval Air Facility. I have that here. I just think that we need to be much more emphatic as opposed to what the language is about proposing a discussion, possible significant impacts. They're either significant or they're not. I believe that they are.
They are. They are.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Any other questions, comments?
No comments.
Do we know that the item is scheduled for planning commission?
I was
meeting tomorrow?
told that it's on the agenda for tomorrow.
And also, well, I had received a notice that the EIR was being recirculated associated with biologicals. Am I correct? So I'm not sure how it could be on the agenda for tomorrow with
Okay,
a 45
if
day.
it's not, that would be fantastic.
We'll try for immediately in the morning, but we'll still hand deliver. But we received from the county a notice of recirculation.
Excellent. On all aspects of the, just the
Biological.
Biologicals, but it would be a recirculation.
Okay.
So there's no urgency then to hand deliver this?
Well, we want to get it as quickly as possible.
Because
I think
the
that
letter has all of our names for
All of our
signature. We'd have to
signatures on it.
Yes.
coordinate the council coming to City Hall and sign the letter.
Can we make that, say, by tomorrow?
As soon as we have we'll have it ready tomorrow, getting all your signatures will
Okay.
be needed.
I can stop by tomorrow.
I can stop by tomorrow.
I would make a motion to approve sending the letter with the amendments provided
Stronger
by
language.
Councilwoman Walker.
Okay. Moved by Edney,
Second.
second by Walker. Please ballot.
Motion passes.
Item 13, ordinance to make the office of the city clerk appointive and have the duties of the city treasurer assumed by the city manager. It's an item that task force of Walker and Edney have been discussing, and you want to give us a report, Mr. Edney? Or
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My colleagues will remember that, I was going to say recuerdo, are reminded that some time ago we discussed the position of the city clerk, and we came to a determination to offer a new position as secretary to the council. As part of that discussion, we agreed to bring it back in a reasonable amount of time. We have looked, as we've continued to look for ways to streamline city operations and control costs, and we've looked at the duties. As you know, because our elected city clerk was also hired by the council for the secretary to the city council's job, that's worked out very well. I think the city staff would suggest that it has, and certainly I believe the council as a whole has found that to be very effective. What we also have looked at, as we've had time to examine, is that those roles may not work out sometime down the line if they were in an incompatible situation, which means if someone was an elected city clerk and someone was the appointed secretary of the council, many of the roles are similar in nature, but it might become difficult potentially if two separate persons were doing that position. We also, as you know, one of the concerns that we had was controlling costs, and where the secretary of the council is a hired employee as opposed to what we had years in the past, where we had an elected city clerk, which was at a full-time salary. So in taking the opportunity to review this after we've had some time with this, it's our recommendation as a task force that we eliminate the position of secretary to the council, make the city clerk a non-elected position, and that person would be appointed and hired by the city council as it remains at this time for the secretary of the council position. Further reviewing that, as time has gone by, the office of the city treasurer, quite frankly, has had less and less responsibilities. Most of those duties are handled directly by the finance department. Ms. Salcido? Hi. Yes. Actually, it's her staff that does all the work. She gets all the credit, but that's okay. Richard, $50 after the meeting, okay? What we do know for a fact that the city treasurer's responsibilities for investments for the city are handled directly by the finance department. They also have the expertise and the training, whereas the city treasurer may or may not, because it's an elected position. While our current city treasurer has served this city admirably and well for a number of years, we thought it'd be best in an additional role of controlling costs and items within the city structure that we also eliminate the city treasurer position and turn those responsibilities over to the city manager. That would make him the signer, still having the finance director and the finance staff doing all the investments things. So I'll let Ms. Walker add any comments, and our recommendation, just to clarify, would be to eliminate the secretary to the council position, eliminate the elected city clerk, and make the position an appointment by the city council for the city clerk, and then the elimination of the city treasurer's position.
The only other comment, and thank you, Mr. Edney, you did an excellent job summarizing status. The only other comment I would like to add is that these potential changes have been communicated to the city clerk and also to the family of the city treasurer.
Yeah, and this would be after the next regular election.
Effective after the regular held election on November, was it 9th? 7th?
Effective in November?
It'd be effective after the November 9th election.
The November 8th election, which would be...
Yeah, it would become effective November 9th, which is the day after the November 8th election.
Okay.
And the reason why we have the ability to do this is because of our charter city.
Because being a charter
designation.
city, you're not obligated to follow the requirements of the general law, which would
Is there any...
put an additional step in there.
A lot of times when you have elected positions, city clerk, city treasurer, and others, it almost add like a checks and balances of actions taken by council cities. Is that jeopardized in any way?
One of the things we looked at, if I could, we looked at the statutory duties of both the city treasurer and the city clerk for those internal control considerations, and I think that we were sufficiently convinced that with the structure that we have with the city manager, with the finance department, that we would retain those internal controls and the checks and balances.
And Mayor, if I may also, it is very much consistent of having the city clerk appointed by the city council as part of that check and balance. So what you have is you have three appointees. You have the city manager, the city clerk, and the city attorney reporting to you. While I have a administrative authority on those positions, I don't manage. I mean, they're separate. They report to you directly. So it is consistent, and it's very much consistent within charter cities to operate in this manner.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question, not about the ability or the skill sets that the city manager possessed, but rather about the time constraints. For the position of city treasurer being given to the city manager, is that temporary, or is that something you're proposing for permanent?
Well, I think, as Ms. Walker explained, and I tried to clarify at the beginning of my comments concerning the city treasurer, the position has really not inclined to have too many responsibilities any longer. It is the finance director and her staff that currently review available investments and make recommendations to that treasurer, and basically all they do is sign off on it. And so all the day-to-day responsibilities of being the treasurer are handled by existing staff. I think it's important to have that checks and balances that the mayor suggested. Instead of giving the full authority to the finance department, there would be no checks and balance because you'd be doing all of that. I think by allowing the treasurer title, if you will, to be under the city manager, it does provide an extra checks and balance. We have ultimate confidence in our finance director and her staff, but I think that's one of the checks and balances that the mayor was alluding to, is keeping those internal controls in there, and that just gives something for a constant check. I think Mr. Duran suggested very, very well that the idea of while Mr. Duran as the city manager runs all those individuals on a day-to-day basis as the city manager, the hiring and firing authority rests with this council for all three of those positions. So again, internal controls that allow us to have those checks and balances.
And if you look at the overwhelming majority of our investments right now are dictated to be in certain categories, which is part of the external audit review to make sure that our investments are in compliance with our...
We are extremely restricted in the state of what we can, where 20 years ago we could invest in many other things, and those are good things, by the way. We can't do derivatives. We can't get into...
You mean we can't be Orange County?
We can't be Orange County.
That's where this
And
came.
so all that changed. And so part of this older duties really come back from a day when we invested in a lot of other things that, so we're in LAIF, we have local bank deposits. It's very simple, straightforward process. And you will still get your monthly report of where those investments are and what their yields are.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Solomon?
Yeah. Who has the time to do this? Does the finance director have the time to check up on the different items that we're purchasing, stocks, bonds?
We are restricted. We cannot own stocks.
For investments.
Actually, the city has developed and has a policy, an investment policy in place, and we follow that policy. That policy also follows state statutes, and it tells us what exactly we can invest in. As to the day-to-day operations, that's handled by my department, my office, me personally, actually, and we invest those funds. We look at the various options that we have, rates, and then determine what to invest our funds in.
That work has actually been performed, and the current city treasurer would come and visit, but that work has been performed for several years this way.
Right. And then I'd like to add that on a monthly basis, council is presented with a detail of those investments as well as the earnings, market value, just a summary of what we're invested in.
Thank you. Somebody ready to make a motion on this?
Subject for review. Yes, one more comment. I was happy to hear Ms. Walker and Mr. Edney state that the individuals currently involved in the incumbents in these positions from the elected perspective have been notified, properly notified that this action was going to take place. Okay.
Correct. Okay, ready for a motion?
I'd move for approval of ordinance number 11 to be determined, and ordinance of the City Council of the City of El Centro adding section 2-10 to Article 1 of Chapter 2 of the City Code to make the office of the city clerk appointive and to have the duties of the city treasurer assumed by the city manager effective November 9, 2011, and repealing sections 2-42 and 2-45 to Division 1, Article 2 of Chapter 2 of the City Code effective November 9, 2011.
Second.
Moved by Walker, second by Edney. Please ballot.
Motion passes.
Okay, item 14, resolution calling a general election, municipal election, and the resolution requesting the Board of Supervisors of the County of Imperial to consolidate a general municipal election. It says here presentation by Clara Obeso, but Mr. Duran, you want to fill this in?
Normally the city clerk would be here. This is the requirement. We have to do this today so that we can participate in the November election for the three positions that will be coming to term this November.
Mr. Mayor, if 3 council members vote no, I guess we don't have to have an election, right?
Well, the city of Imperial has dealt with that over the last 10 years.
My thought exactly.
You know what? That's a great idea.
I don't think you want to do that.
All right.
I'll make a motion in support of the resolution calling for a general municipal election and resolution resulting in the Board of Supervisors of the County of Imperial to consolidate a general municipal election.
Second.
Moved by Edney, second by Walker. Please ballot.
And B?
Yeah, we need to set another action for B.
Motion passes.
Resolution of the City Council, City of El Centro, California, requesting the Board of Supervisors of the County of Imperial to consolidate a general municipal election to be held in November 2011 with the election to be held on the date pursuant to section 10403 of the Election Code.
Second.
Moved by Edney, second by Walker. Please ballot.
Motion passes.
Okay.
You haven't done 15.
No.
I was in-
Item 15 is the annual review of the El Centro Downtown Business Improvement District. Intention to renew the bid for 2011, 2012, set assessment appropriations for fiscal year 2011, 2012, and set public hearing pursuant to the Parking and Business Improvement Area Law of 1989. We have a presentation by Deborah Harrell.
Mayor, council members. On July the 20th of 2010, the El Centro City Council levied the assessment for the bid, and that was Resolution 1081. Pursuant to the provisions of the Parking and Business Improvement Law of 1989, codified as the California Streets and Highway Code 36500, the council is required to annually adopt a budget for the El Centro downtown bid, and you're also required to hold a public hearing to levy the appropriate assessments. The action for tonight is to accept the budget appropriations report, and you're also required to consider the resolution of intention to levy an annual assessment within the bid for the fiscal year 2011-2012. If the resolution of intention is approved, then a public hearing will be held on June the 21st. And at that time, the council will hear testimony for and against the bid or against the levying of appropriate assessments for the fiscal year 2011-2012. Are there any questions?
Mayor, I'd like to have clarification on the date of the hearing. Is June 21st?
We had
The
put
report, there was an error. It says July 5th. It's June 21st. Your report indicates July 5th.
Yeah, we originally scheduled that for July the 5th, but then realized we could bring it back the 21st.
Okay. Can we review page 3, please? This is my annual complaint with regard to the summary of assessments and the income and expenditure document on page 3. We cannot add in uncollected assessments of $74,000. It's not realistic. We're not going to collect anywhere near that level. So for us to estimate available funds of over $100,000, no. No. So I don't know what we want to do there, but we know that it's not going to be 74,000.
I believe it, Mayor, Council, until the city council makes a finding that those are uncollectible, we have to keep reporting it.
Well, then add a footnote or something.
Oh, please,
But I
yes.
think
We,
that
we recognize that number just
That's-
gets bigger, but our struggle is,
not
it says
happening.
many things from the state controller's office that we have to keep reporting out until it's determined uncollectible, and that determination has not been made yet.
Okay, then, between the original agenda item and what was provided to us, it looks like what changed was the total available funds for fiscal year 2010, 2011 dropped from 60,000 to 48,000. Is that the only other change in the amended item?
The change was the beginning balance on July the
Right.
1st.
Okay.
And then we went ahead, because we were changing that, we went ahead and then just updated the amount collected.
So, Deborah, the action that we're taking today is one, to accept the report,
To accept the
which
report,
includes the budget,
right.
correct? And
Then to approve the resolution, and that will trigger the public hearing.
and the
For
public
June
hearing was
21st.
scheduled for 2 weeks from now.
Yes,
How
sir.
how will the business owners that are part of the assessment be notified of the hearing?
As soon as the resolution is signed, we send a letter to all the bid members through the post office. In it will be a copy of the resolution, and it will be a copy of the streets and highway codes, which gives them the instructions on how to properly protest.
And it's going to have to be done pretty quickly, because 21st
letters-
is 2 weeks from now.
As soon as we get the resolution signed, the letters are ready to go out tomorrow.
Well, we had a discussion related to the bid 3 weeks ago. Was it 3 weeks ago, or
3 weeks, last council meeting.
last council meeting? There was a lot of people in the audience that were opposing the assessment, and they were non-English, they were Spanish speakers. So does the letter that go out is in Spanish as well?
It's in English and Spanish.
Will those letters be hand-delivered, or are we sending them through the post office?
No, ma'am, we send them through the post office.
They really need to go out quickly.
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
We plan for them to go out tomorrow. As long as the resolution is signed.
Okay. I can sign the resolution today or tomorrow, early.
Okay.
Mr. Solomon?
Yeah, since I won't be here on the 21st, I'd like to express my opinion on this. My granddaughter has a mother that does hair, and she's in the same position as quite a few others. They are self-employed, they are single parents, they have no insurance. I think a lot of them don't. And their clients, some of their clients have experienced unemployment at the moment, and so that requires that they're cutting down on having their hair done. And in addition to that, there's things that I like to call natural. The gas prices are going up. The food prices are going up. BID has a fee that it wants to charge. And if you look at what we're doing tonight, it's a small amount, but the trash is going up. And these are the people that are down there in that area that are going to have to pay. Now, the problem that I have with this is that we try to get the property owners to step up to the plate and pay their fair share. They refuse to do it. It's kind of like the old saying, the rich don't want to do it, so it's falls down on the back of those who are least likely to be able to pay it. They're the ones that have to pay it. So here we are right now. Those people that own the buildings are saying, I don't want to do nothing. They don't even come down, paint the buildings. Buildings are falling down. They don't care about it as long as they have an opportunity to make money. And so they'll say to someone, you go in, fix it up, and then I'll give you a small amount of rent that you have to pay. But it's wrong to me. It's wrong to have those people that are least likely to pay, and those that have the money to pay simply saying, I'm not going to do it. And so I oppose it. So that's my position now. It would be if I was here on the 21st, I would say the same thing. So I'm just saying it now, so it's on the record that that's what Ben Solomon says.
Thank you, Mr. Solomon. Ms. Anderson?
No, I have no comments, Mr. Eddy.
Mr. Edney?
I've made my comments very clear on this.
Okay,
Can
I don't,
ask one quick
Yeah.
question? Would it be a burden for staff to hand deliver the letters?
No, ma'am. It would not be a burden.
I just think, given the timing and the fact that we've already represented to the folks how important it is for them to be here. Let's say the letters went out, I mean, mail gets delivered, whenever it gets delivered, there's a protest, instructions with regard to protest. If they have questions, how to do that. I just don't think it's going to be quick enough unless we hand deliver the letters.
Recognizing that some business owners may not receive them directly because they're not there, but their employee may be there. They may not be open yet by the time we come by. They may close their doors for lunch. We may run into that, but we'll endeavor to make every effort.
So whatever we cannot hand deliver, we'll mail immediately. Is that acceptable?
Yes.
Just so you can understand, there's no obligation to actually mail the Streets and Highways Code just says you need to publish it 7 days, publish a notice in the newspaper 7 days before the actual public hearing, so.
So we really do go above and
Right.
beyond with regard to the notification.
I'll put the bid, Mr. Jason, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Curtis, kind of on alert. In that, over the last 3 years since I've been in the council, I've approved the bid assessment, and I've said every time that support dwindles as I look at some of the financial information in terms of collection, in terms of hearing from people over their perception of the value that they get. And it's a point to me that is going to be very important in 2 weeks, is what kind of outreach is done to the people that were here 3 weeks ago. And I know they're going to get the letter, and some people would say, well, they got the letter. If they want to come to the council meeting, they can come. If they want to submit their letter, they can. But I really hope that that the bid board, not staff, goes beyond that and is willing to do a personal outreach to those business people, because I think they need it. It was very clear from the testimony that they don't see a value, a return on that investment, and I think that they need to be shown, told, clarified that there is a return, if there is, and hopefully they'll accept that, and that makes my decision easier. If they do not accept that there's a return, I think I'll factor that into my decision. When Ms. Walker and I met with the bid, one of the items that we had asked the bid to consider was to do an adjustment on the categories, because I still think it's unfair to have independent contractors, which are the people that the beauticians, beauty salons, that have 6 or 7 or 8 independent contractors. Each of them pay $80. So if you look at the aggregate of how much those independent contractors are paying, it's more than some of the retail operations. And the retail operations get I can see the benefit to them. Independent contractors, beauticians have told me, including today, I went out to downtown and I talked to 3 different businesses. They said, we get nothing out of our $80. And it is significant to a lot of people. That's could be significant money for the day. So I hope that there's an outreach done in an attempt to get the businesses that were here and others to understand and have a conversation. Okay. I need a motion from the council. Anything else, Ms. Sarah?
No, sir.
Okay. Jason, do you want to say anything? Mr. Curtis? No? Okay. I need a motion.
Approval of resolution number 11 to be determined, resolution of City Council of City of El Centro declaring its intention to levy an annual assessment within the established El Centro Downtown Business Improvement District for July 1, 2011 through June 30, 2012.
Second.
Moved by Walker, second by Sanders.
Mr. Mayor, can I just clarify that the public hearing date will be changed from July 5th to June 21st?
Okay.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
I'd then like to approve resolution number 11- to be determined, resolution of the City Council of the City of El Centro accepting the budget report for the El Centro Downtown Business Improvement District for July 1, 2011 through June 30, 2012.
Second.
Moved by Walker, second by Sanders. Please ballot.
Motion passes 4-1 and no.
Thank you. Let's move on to item number 18, CR&R's request for annual adjustment of solid waste recycling and the inclusion of street sweeping services. We'll have a presentation by Terry Hagan.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Also want to mention that we have representatives from CR&R here tonight, too, that may wish to speak. I'll first review the contract services that we have with the current contract. We have a residential 3-cart system where we have 3 containers, trash, recyclables, and green waste. We have quarterly drop-off events for the residents. We have 3 bulky item collections per resident. They simply just call in and request those. We have curbside used oil collection. And we have discarded item collection in the downtown alleys. There's disposal of waste at the CR&R facility by residents. That's a very handy system, too. It's right here in the city limits. You simply show up there with a pickup during working hours. We have a compost giveaway event. We have collection of the city facilities free of charge. Collection of waste and recyclables from city-sponsored events. And we have a new item, city street sweeping services. We have been under contract since last October for the past 8 months. Paying for this service, and we have a proposal tonight for making this a free service.
Mr. Hagan, the collection of the city facilities, does that include our city-owned hospital?
The hospital?
You had an item up here that the...
I'm not sure of that.
It doesn't include the hospital.
I'm pretty sure it's not.
No, it does not.
Okay, as a background, the new contract was approved March 20th, 2007. With the original contract with CR&R. Section 6.2 of the agreement sets the initial maximum rates allowed during the first year ending in June 30th. Per 6.3 of the agreement, annual rate adjustments must be requested by March 3rd. On July 1st, 2008, CR&R's first rate increase took effect. On February 25th, 2010, CR&R submitted their second rate request, and that was for July 1st, 2010 to June 30th, 2010. On February 24th, 2011, CR&R submitted their third rate adjustment in accordance with Section 6.3 from July. Yes.
Number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Should that be June 30, 2011?
No, that was for the second rate adjustment. We've had two rate adjustments to date.
In the year is incorrect.
You're going from
Is there a
July
mistake
1
there?
You're going from July 1, 2010 to June 30, 2010.
Correct, you're right. It should be 2011. June, that you are correct. So this should be 2011 right there. Then on February 24th, 2011, CR&R submitted the third rate adjustment in accordance with 6.3 for July 1st, 2011 through June 30th, 2012. After receiving the written request, City requested HF&H, our consultants, to review their rated adjustment request. CR&R has been performing city street sweeping services for the past 8 months under a separate contract, with the understanding that the contract term would be adjusted at this meeting. Since provision for the annual rate adjustment is contained in the original contract, it's not likely that Prop 218 does apply here, but CR&R has agreed to indemnify this and defend the city should it be challenged. The rate adjustments is based on these various published priced indices: fuel, equipment, labor, disposal, and insurance. This shows the changes in the indices. We've got the old values here and the new values here, and the percentage change. And the two high values are the 27.7% for fuel, and our landfill tipping rate at Allied landfill went from $47 and will go up to $54.48 on July 1st, which is a 16% increase. Now, these indices aren't weighed equally. Fuel is for the residential cart rate. Fuel is weighted at 7.4%, but disposal or landfill tipping fee is a third of the weighted, 33.3% weighted on the indices. Now, CR&R is in the process of converting their facility to a transfer station. Once that becomes operational, probably within the next 12 months, the tipping fee, they'll be going to a different landfill. The tipping fee will drop back down, and the overall residential cart rate will go back down. Summary of the rate adjustments by the service category. For cart and bin service residential, they submitted 8.66%. CR or HF&H reviewed this, and with the agreement from CR&R, it's 8%, adjusted to 8%. Roll-off box service initially was 3% request, adjusted down to 2.3%, and then the roll-off box disposal rate from 61.49 per ton down to 60.53 per ton. The next 3 slides show the current trash rates versus the proposed annual rate with the annual rate increase. The key one that affects all the residents is currently we're paying $17.61 per month. That'll be increased to $1.41 to $19.02 per month. Again, next year this should be adjusted back down with the transfer station operational. Got the current rates here at the top and new rates at the bottom. And again, current rates on the left, proposed rates on the right. Street sweeping services. We have two options to consider. We could continue street sweeping service with the city paying the $150,000 per year and extend the contract 5 years. When I brought this last October, we desired to try this service, street sweeping service, on a trial basis, and CR&R provided us a reduction. Our budgeted amount for street sweeping was $212,000. They reduced it $62,000 down to $150,000. They took it over, and it was with the understanding that we'd have a 5-year contract extension. It occurred to staff here a couple months ago, well, if we can save $62,000 with a 5-year contract extension, what would it take to, what number of years contract extension would it take to get it for free? Save $212,000 a year. That turned out to be a 12-year contract extension, which staff believes is a good choice. HF&H reviewed this too. They concurred.
So it'd be 12 years plus the remaining contract term of 4 years, so
Yes,
16.
year total.
that's correct.
Awfully long time to go out for a contract.
Well,
The previous trash contract, I believe, went over 3 decades.
Yes. And I think.
Was it a contract that was renewed periodically? It wasn't a 30-year contract. It was, I presume it
No,
was.
I believe it was renewed.
It was renewed. But the task force that was assigned to do this did consider that. And we felt that the benefits of the operation of getting the streets swept, and also the company is expanding the sphere, if you will, and sweeping areas that had not been swept in the past. So they encompassed all of that. And so I think this is, we felt that this was a fair way to work with CR&R. Mr. Hagan, please refresh the council's memory as to the number of the quadrants that will be swept. Now, it's over, help me out, please. The new area that's going to have the streets swept, he started that, I think, a couple of months ago.
That's right. Buena Vista and
Thank you.
Countryside and Legacy Ranch, they were all added. Part of the contract also includes any future portion that's annexed into the city, any of the county that's annexed into the city will be picked up for free as well.
Are you done with it?
So, just about. So this equates to, over the remaining life of the contract, with inflation, of a $4 million savings to the city. There is one correction here in the staff report. The street sweeping specifications still included the compensation and payment of services, paragraph 2 and 3. Those need to be struck, since those would be done for free. And staff recommends the adoption of this resolution with those elimination of those 2 paragraphs in the street sweeping, and adoption of with the free street sweeping services and the extension of the contract of 12 years.
Thank you, Terry. Comments from council?
Trying to find out with regard to the street sweeping services, this is something that we get a lot of questions about or complaints if it's not done well. I see in the backup material that we talk about CR&R's responsibility to try to coordinate to the fullest extent possible. Street sweeping's not going to take place on the same day that they're doing trash pickup when the bins are out.
That's correct.
What is contained in the amendment that talks about service level performance? That they have to provide street sweeping services to our satisfaction a certain percentage of the time. We can't have excuses that their trucks are broken down. They have to be operational, 99.9% of the time. I'm just wondering, it has to be done well, has to be done thoroughly, all of that.
Well, I can speak from the last 8 months' experience. The calls have significantly been reduced since they took it over. Before we were doing it, when our street sweeping vehicle broke down, that route would simply be skipped for another 2 weeks. So currently, the residential areas are done every other week, so it's twice a month. So if we missed a route, it would be
Yeah.
only done once that month.
But here's the distinction. We're on the honeymoon period right now.
Mhm.
So they're going to absolutely be doing the best that they can because they're looking to extend this contract now for 16 years. Honeymoon's going to be over. Where's our contractual language that requires them to continue to perform these services to our satisfaction? I know we have very, very detailed provisions in the contract having to do with trash collection and how that entire operational segment of our relationship is to be conducted. But I'm trying to find something in section 4.4.1 that specifically calls out service level performance that's going to be acceptable to the city.
Dean, come forward. I think that, I'm sorry.
It's not part of the contract.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to ask Dean if he would come forward and speak to that because we had quite a discussion about that very issue.
Well, right, and all I'm asking is where is it in the contract amendment?
Yeah, I'm not sure that it's in the contract amendment, but the
Well, the street
specifications in
sweeping
section
specifications
4.
would cover it.
Yeah.
I mean, we have the frequency and get down into a lot of detail.
We just need to incorporate
Can
that.
we incorporate that
Yes.
by
Document,
reference? That's
right.
all
Is that
I'm
we
asking.
would incorporate
I
all the
don't-
specifications.
Being, I just
Okay.
need to
Right.
be
Alright.
contractually.
For the
that's all.
purpose of this discussion, section 5 calls out that, for example, the contractor shall sweep all residential streets 24 times per calendar year as indicated on approved maps, arterial swept 52 times per week per calendar, and it continues into that performance standard. And I think by taking these specifications and including them.
As long as it's incorporated by reference, we're good to go.
Okay. And thank you for mentioning that, because while we look at these, we need to incorporate it into the
I was thinking
contract.
she wanted something more detailed.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Luis.
I know from a business point of view, having the 12 years was a way to get back your money.